to work jointly on their development amid fears that Russia and China are stealing a march, and in the case of Russia, already used hypersonic missiles on the Ukrainian battlefield. The US has been working on hypersonics for a while and tested one such weapon only last month. But analyst Jim Lindsay of the US-based Council on Foreign Relations says hypersonic research is becoming a new facet of the global arms race.
Countries like China are developing hypersonics because they're concerned that U.S. missile defenses would be able to essentially neutralize their ballistic missile force. Americans see these efforts to try to beat their defenses, so now they're going to invest a lot of money to make sure that they can counter these efforts to evade their defenses, but also so they can pose similar threats to others. And so you get into this arms race competition. And again, a big issue, been much talked about, is can you somehow revive arms control for the 21st century? And the answer so far has been, doesn't look very good.
And he makes the point that in many ways, hypersonic missiles are less useful and less flexible than existing weaponry. But the heated race to acquire them is just one of many fresh setbacks in efforts to revive arms control. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. Russia's military steps up attacks near the Ukrainian capital Kyiv a day after a large Russian warship sinks in the Black Sea. Twitter launches a counterattack against Elon Musk's plans for a hostile takeover. And South Korea lifts all of its COVID-19 social distancing rules for the first time since the pandemic began. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
If you live in Williamsburg, chances are good you've seen them. Giant piles of beard hair rotting in the streets. Don't worry, it just means hipster molting season is here again. Experts say the husks of dead beards don't pose a threat to public safety and are just part of the natural life cycle of these strange organisms.
Once a year, all at the same time, every 20-something urban male sheds his ironic beard to make room for larger, more fanciful facial hair. They need the beards. They're a tough exoskeleton that protects these young people from the non-whimsical realities of life.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says it's the largest molting season on record. In Brooklyn, sanitation crews are working overtime to clean up the loose whiskers the exuviating males have left behind. The affected youth's molting season comes right before their mating season, when the males use their lush beards to impress the local hordes of burlesque females.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
Welcome to Free Talk Live. The phones are open here. You can join us. You can bring up whatever is on your mind. That is what we do. Take your calls about whatever's on your mind here at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio with you tonight, you've got Ian.
And Chris.
And Chris, you and I both went this morning to another sad, but I guess in some ways happy court event.
It's hard to tell, right? We'll have to see, how it all works out. It's one of these things where it's like, you don't know. You still don't know. It's still kind of unfolding.
Well, let's talk about what it was. And yeah. I'm actually glad that nobody is normally here with us. Our co-host, nobody is normally here on Friday nights. He asked for the night off tonight. He has not slept apparently for days and is pretty exhausted.
It's kind of understandable.
Given that, I suspect his not sleeping. I mean, he tends to sometimes not sleep anyways, just because he gets in he just programs and never stops.
Sure.
But I suspect it has to do with the fact that he did take a plea deal this morning in the Crypto 6 case. And that probably is what kept him from sleeping over the past few days. And nobody and I are allowed to talk again under the bail conditions that were modified several weeks ago now at this point. But we still aren't allowed to talk about the case. So it's probably better that he's actually not here because, I would think we should be able to say what he did, since that's
How
public,
are you supposed
right?
to defend yourself and not be able to speak to the co-defendant? It just seems crazy.
It's
to
insane.
Me. It seems
Yeah.
like a violation of like fundamental due process rights. If you're going to be tried with somebody else, you got to be able to talk to them about like, well, what did happen? What didn't happen?
Yeah.
What do you recall? What do I recall?
Well, the FBI and the prosecutors certainly get to talk to each other.
Right.
Right. All the FBI agents get to talk to each other, and Postal Service, whoever the hell else is involved in this insane situation. But so we're not supposed to talk about the case, but I don't think that means we couldn't talk about what has happened publicly. And anyone could have attended this. This wasn't right. It's not a secret trial. Anybody could have attended this morning.
I attended it. You attended it.
Yeah,
and
it was
we had,
super short notice, though. We didn't find out about it until yesterday afternoon or yesterday evening. But we all, you and I and a few other folks, managed to come out this morning at 10 a.m. at the Concord Federal District Courthouse, which is the same place where Renee and Andy Spinella, who are two other co-defendants in the Crypto 6 case a couple days ago or earlier this week, took similar plea deals. Both, I believe all three of them have now pled to a quote-unquote wire fraud charge. So no one thus far has pled to what ostensibly was the reason for the investigation, which is money transmission without a government permission slip. It's all been wire fraud in this case. And I believe somebody put it as contempt of bank was the real actual what this is about, because no one was defrauded out of any money at any point.
It's crazy. Even the prosecutor said during, I believe it was nobody's hearing, that the bank wasn't damaged. They effectively said something to that effect, or there were no losses, there was no victim. And it's like, how are you? How is a judge supposed to accept a plea deal where the prosecution is saying there's not even a victim in the case?
He did.
He did, and this is the amazing part. I mean, technically, he hasn't accepted it yet because this wasn't the sentencing. But
no, he did accept it today. That was the purpose of today's hearing. Sentencing is different from that. So,
you're right. I'm sorry. Correct. You're right.
Nobody signed a piece of paper, a 13-page agreement with the government gang, and the today's purpose of the hearing was for the man in the robe to go over the agreement and, line by line, basically say, you've read this, you understand it, and do you plead guilty?
Right, and that's most of it. It was mostly like, do you understand what you're getting yourself into? Do you understand what you're going to agree? Do you understand the consequences?
You're waiving your rights?
Yeah, have your lawyers advised you on this? And then they asked the lawyers, did they, have you advised him? And it's like everybody has to confirm. And
my favorite part of the hearing was when he was asked if he was under any kind of duress or coercion. And
that was
his
entertaining.
Answer was like, well,
of course.
Excluding what they're doing to me to get me to take the plea deal,
right?
Because they don't count that as coercion in courts. That's just the way they do quote unquote business. So it's a sad situation. Of course, you don't blame anybody. I don't blame anybody for taking a plea if they feel like that's the best road for them. I mean, it's sad because it's a federal felony, and that's something I learned this week. I didn't know this. I knew you could do a annulment of like a state felony.
Is that what they call it? I used that word earlier, and I thought that wasn't quite right. Wasn't quite the right word.
That's the legal term.
Isn't it annulment when they like undoes it? I thought they just erased it from the record. Not
all of that.
It wasn't technically an annulment.
An annulment would be an erasing from the record, and basically you are not convicted of that thing.
But that's what legally they call it. Is an annulment?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But they don't have that in the federal
level.
system for a felony. For a felony conviction, federal level, you cannot get that annulled. It's there for life.
I was always under the impression that you couldn't annul it, and I didn't realize that you could at the state level.
You can.
At least some states.
I think it has to go. Yeah, I don't know if it's all states, but here in New Hampshire, I think it's like 7 to 10 years if it's a felony or something like that. And after that time,
I had never heard of that before until I think probably until I got to New Hampshire.
Yeah, I think for misdemeanors, it can be as little as like 3 years or something, depending on the class of the misdemeanor.
The thing that I find really weird about at least New Hampshire, and I don't know if this is the same in other states, but like there's an arrest record, and you have to pay them $100 if you want to
wipe it.
Yeah, to wipe it. It's like, wait a minute, hold on. They didn't charge me, they didn't convict me, and yet you have an arrest record, like that's somehow going to be used against you potentially. It's like,
they're going to get money out of you any way they can,
and you have to pay for that. Yeah. Like the person who wasn't even convicted of anything. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Well, that's government for you.
Yep. And so that's where we were this morning. But then we went a little bit later to Footloose had another court hearing.
That was an entertaining, that was more entertaining than the first trial.
Oh, of course.
I mean, yeah.
And we have video because it's state court, and they have to let video cameras in there, which is one of the things that, I have to wonder, surely someone has challenged the federal courts not allowing in cameras at some point, right? Like that must have happened in the 100 years or however long cameras have been around.
Here's the difference. The federal courts usually are only taking much more serious cases, like where there's more serious jail time. Like, I mean, think about it.
What's that have to? That has nothing to do with bringing a camera in.
No. But you're not going to go after the small stuff. You're going to be focused on the big stuff.
What
right?
do you mean?
You're going to be focused on whatever you're being accused of. You're not going to be in most cases.
Oh, you mean
you're not going to be worrying about challenging stuff?
I just mean like media. Like anybody who's been denied access should be able to challenge that.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting question because it would be media, I guess, that would have to challenge it, not the defendant, presumably.
I mean, the defendant could. That is, I would think they would have standing to say, hey, what about my right to have my, more than somebody typing a transcript out? Because that's all you get in federal court is the lady that types the transcript. And if an observer wants to somehow record things, they would have to write it down. That's all you get. You can't bring in a camera, you can't bring in an audio recorder, and you can't bring in a video device.
You're right. And what's interesting, though, about this is, too, it's not a law. It's a court rule, as I understand it.
Yeah, of course.
So you're basically appealing to the people who are implementing the rule in the first place if you're going to try to appeal something like that. It's a very bizarre, courts are very bizarre kind of.
Yeah, and you're right about
and they work and stuff.
Yeah, you're right about it being a court rule because during COVID, and I don't know if it's still happening, but during COVID, they started doing phone access for federal trials.
Yeah.
So Chris Cantwell's hearing that they had recently on the civil case that he was involved with down in Charlottesville, that was available on the phone. You could call in and listen to the entire thing. There was no video feed, but you could call and listen. And that was the first time that I've ever seen a federal court, like COVID was, the first time that I'd ever seen federal courts do that. And I hope they keep that around because that gives an unprecedented level of access to federal courts that have never been accessible in that way before.
It's interesting, too. With COVID, I believe, and you can probably search YouTube for this, but you can probably find, or Odyssey, you can probably find video, even though you're not supposed to do this, of federal courts, using Zoom of the feed, which we've never had before. Because
anybody
COVID.
Recording that is in violation of a court order.
They are, but I believe people have published some videos to YouTube.
It wouldn't surprise me if YouTube took those down, but Odyssey would be probably a safer place for something like that. If you're willing to risk federal prosecution for that, I don't know what the charge would be, probably contempt. The number is 603-283-6160. You can join us here, share your thoughts. It's Free Talk Live.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. It's Bitcoin.com.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open here. You can join us at 603-283-6160. Coming up, we're going to get into the latest bad news for the newspaper industry. They've been cutting back their print days and the number of pages and the sizes of the pages for years now. And it ain't over. They're going to keep cutting. We'll tell you more about that on the way here. And again, the number if you want to join the show, it's 603-283-6160. We're just kind of talking about our experience today. Chris, you and I and a few other activists, Joa, Breaking the Flaw, was there as well. We went to the hearing for our friend Nobody, and which was a plea deal hearing, meaning that there are now 3 of the original Crypto 6 remaining who have not yet taken any kind of an offer in that situation. If you haven't checked out the Crypto 6, you can go to thecrypto6.com. There's videos and some background there. Please feel free to learn more about this attack against cryptocurrency and the freedom to use it. That's what this case is all about. The federal government would like you to believe that it's all about quote-unquote defrauding the banks.
Oh, this is so ridiculous.
Even though they've admitted that the banks did not actually lose any money or property.
And you have to I mean, this is the thing. It bothers me to no end that we don't have audio or video recording of these prosecutors saying this stuff, because it's like people should be so upset and angry, but the courts keep this, this kind of stuff from you because they don't allow at the federal level, they don't allow you in to record.
Right. Yeah, it's really frustrating. And like I said, I if anybody knows if there's ever been a case, I mean, I just presume that with all the media in the United States and freedom of the press and all that, surely someone has brought a case against these stupid court rules that prohibit the most basic of recording devices from coming into the courthouse.
I mean, the thing is, when you start looking at like stats and things like that, it's almost as bad as a show trial. The court system. I think it's something like 98% of cases. I think there's a plea bargain, so they plead guilty, basically under duress because they're threatened with ridiculous amounts of time in jail in a cage. And then
that happened in this case, of course, where they were threatened with more charges, which they weren't told what the more charges would be.
And then you end up, and then if you look at those who do take it to court, what's the percentage of people who get found not guilty? And it's
low.
It's low. I thought it was like 78% or something like that, but it might be as low as 60%.
Yep. So you can understand why somebody would take a plea deal, and in nobody's case, it's my understanding, word gets around from lawyers or whatever, that his offer was time served. And as you know, last year, he spent 6 months in a cage when the government was arguing he was a bail risk and, he's going to run or whatever it was, or he's dangerous. And so they finally let him out in September after 6 months of sitting in the cage. And so now they're going to count that as his sentence, basically, for this quote-unquote wire fraud that he pled to.
Yeah.
Again, no victim, no crime.
And the prosecutor literally said this in the hearing. Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how people can be okay with this and still be under the belief that, government good. It's not. That's just
government
not
evil.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And it's not like it's just the prosecutor or just the FBI or just law enforcement. It's across the board. Yeah. It really is.
It's a system of people who have had their hearts and souls just removed, and they just don't seem to have humanity left. I mean, I don't know. I think the longer people work for the government, the less they are human. I mean, I realize they're like us. They look like us. They walk and talk like us. But it must eat away at your soul to do those jobs. And I feel for those people. I mean,
yeah, I don't understand.
I get that they probably do deal with bad people, like, actual killers or
most
whatever.
Most of these people that they're dealing with are like drug crimes with no victim.
I wonder what the breakdown is. I wonder if you were to look at these prosecutors' histories and see what kind of convictions they've gotten. What are the crimes?
We already have a good idea of that based on the fact that it's people who either aren't seeing a cage or they're seeing it, meaning there's probably no victim, or they are seeing a cage, and most of the jails are filled up with drug crimes, nonviolent drug crimes.
Yep.
So I don't know.
That's true at the state and the federal level. There's a lot of that.
I don't know. It's one thing if you were going after rapists and murderers, but that's not what they're going after. They're not targeting people with actual victims. They're targeting, they're targeting political activists. They're targeting, even when somebody gets charged with something like wire fraud, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the reason that they're investigating that case.
Right.
If you start looking at like numbers too, often you'll find that there's these weird cases where, there's, frequently when you're seeing what the FBI will prosecute, it's going to be stuff that's like, okay, there was so many millions of dollars involved in fraud, like actual fraud, where there might have been a victim, an actual
That's
victim.
the reason why the wire fraud statutes were written,
right?
For actual fraud.
But when you go and you look at what they sometimes prosecute, which are people who have not created any kind of victim, that should make people think, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why are they going after these particular individuals? And I think it's a perfect example is the Crypto 6 case here. So,
you mentioned activists being prosecuted. We talked about briefly, but I want to get deeper into what happened in state court today, where you and I went to watch the Footloose hearing. Footloose is one of what they are calling the New Hampshire 9, although Joa from Breaking the Flaw, he had a much better name. He called them the Noble 9, which I liked. I thought that was much better, but people have been calling it the New Hampshire 9. 9 people who were arrested, most of whom didn't know one another. They were almost complete strangers. I think Footloose and Therese knew one another, but the rest of them, no one knew each other.
Yeah.
And these are people who were arrested at what they call the Executive Council meeting here in New Hampshire. So for listeners that aren't familiar, we have a governor position in New Hampshire. There's no lieutenant governor in New Hampshire. There's just the governor. And then there's what they call the Executive Council, which is a 5-seat board that essentially has... They kind of control the purse strings to some extent. The governor cannot sign off on spending more than, I think, like $1,500 or $15,000. It's 15 something, and it's fairly low. And he cannot approve any amount of spending that is above this relatively low number without the executive council approving it. So that's what they do, or one of the things that they do. It's sort of the main role. So it was at one of these meetings, they were going to accept like $27 million in federal bribe money for COVID-related stuff. And hundreds of people showed up to oppose this, to show their political strength, say, hey, hey, executive counselors, don't take this money, don't take this bribe from the feds.
Yeah. And just to be clear, this is bigger than COVID, because we've been opposing federal bribes at the state level for a long time. And New Hampshire actually has a history of refusing federal monies, federal bribes.
Yeah, seatbelt law is a good example of that. Yeah. A long time. We still don't have a seatbelt law, and they've been trying for years.
And this, by the way, predates the Free State Project. It predates libertarians moving to New Hampshire.
There's a reason New Hampshire was chosen as the destination for the Free State Project. So it was at that meeting with the hundreds of people attending, all who were behaving very nicely. They were all just sitting quietly watching this meeting, and then all of a sudden, cops came up and they grabbed, not grabbed at that point, but later they grabbed them. Footloose, who is a friend of the show, and a lady named Therese, who's a nurse, and they asked them to get up and come to the back of the room, where they subsequently arrested them.
They were completely silent up until the arrest.
And then they arrested 7 other people who kind of spoke out and were upset about it. We'll tell you more about it coming up. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off, now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Russia's military has stepped up attacks near the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, a day after its large warship, the Moskva, sunk in the Black Sea, which Ukraine said was a result of damage sustained in Ukrainian missile strikes. Russia's Ministry of Defense said it struck a factory near Kyiv that produces long and medium-range missiles, as well as anti-ship missiles. Both sides are now gearing up for a ground war in the east of the country over territories in Ukraine's Donbass region, which have been claimed by Russian separatists. In Washington, U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price said the U.S. and its NATO allies are ready to impose more sanctions on Russia while providing security assistance to Ukraine. He also echoed President Biden's pledge of swift and severe consequences if Russia deploys nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons.
You've heard from the president, you've heard from us that there would be consequences not only from the United States, but we would ensure that those consequences would be severe, would be swift, and would be enacted by our allies and partners around the world.
Twitter has launched a counterattack against Elon Musk's plan for a hostile takeover. The social media company is making a corporate maneuver commonly called a poison pill. FSN's Rachel Silverman has that report from San Francisco.
The so-called poison pill blocks hostile takeovers by giving certain shareholders the right to purchase more stock if an outsider, in this case Elon Musk, tries to take control. That would effectively dilute Musk's stake in Twitter. He recently revealed he had acquired a 9% stake in the social media company and then announced plans to buy Twitter for $43 billion. Musk says his vision for Twitter includes relaxing its moderation policies. Twitter says the poison pill plan will remain in effect for 1 year. Rachel Silverman, San Francisco.
South Korea is lifting all of its COVID-19 social distancing rules. People will still be required to wear face masks, but from next week, all other restrictions will be lifted for the first time since the pandemic began. Nora Weineck reports.
South Korean Prime Minister Kim Bok-kyum says the virus situation has stabilized and the medical system's capabilities are under control. From Monday, smaller businesses will be able to operate freely without a curfew, and a 10-person limit for private gatherings will be removed. The mask mandate, however, will be kept for now as the government monitors the situation. South Korea's daily COVID-19 cases fell below 150,000 this week, down from more than 600,000 cases a day a month ago. The country's Disease Control and Prevention Agency says the current declining trend could continue for some time. Nora Weinig, Tokyo.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can bring up whatever is on your mind here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you here tonight, it's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And Chris.
Bonnie joining us. You work at the Mighty Moose Mart here in town, and so that's why you're a little bit late with us here tonight. You're sitting in for nobody, so welcome.
Yeah, I was kind of turned down, so I didn't hear myself just now, so I kind of stopped saying Bonnie.
There you go. But you're here, and it's good to have you.
Yeah.
So we were just recapping something that you couldn't attend today. You weren't able to come to Concord due to your other obligation. And Chris and I were there for what they call the New Hampshire 9 or the Noble 9 hearing. This was not a trial. It was just a trial management thing, a case management.
Trial management conference.
For them to finally find out what they're being accused of?
Well, they found out that there's more, at least charges for Footloose specifically. A friend of the show who we've had behind a microphone.
I don't think it was just Footloose, as I understood it. Wasn't it everybody was getting more charges?
No, I don't think so. I think they specifically had charges for Footloose. Maybe.
I don't think so, because isn't that why they were all so upset? Because they didn't know about these new charges? Why would they have been upset if it was just Footloose?
I didn't catch anything for anybody else in that. Oh, you're right. No, what happened was they weren't. I don't think they were new charges.
Or amended.
I think they were amended.
They were calling them amended charges. Yeah.
But for Footloose, he got a new more than one new charge today, as I understand it. So we're talking about the New Hampshire 9. They got arrested at this executive council meeting to oppose,
just ridiculous,
in protest, if you will. Even though they weren't protesting, they were just sitting silently.
Well, they're facing their backs to Sununu.
They were having. I think the best way to describe it is a silent protest.
Yeah. And it was non-disruptive as well.
And so they got arrested. First Footloose and Therese were led back, and in my opinion, they should not have gotten up. It's easy to second guess, right? Whenever you're on the outside looking at somebody's situation, but basically, state police goons came up to them and invited them, asked them to get up and come to the back of the room. And if it were me, I would say, no thanks. I'm here to watch the meeting.
Well, you can't talk, because if you talk, then that's violating the rules, which is disorderly, which means that they have now a reason to arrest you.
Well, I would rather they arrest me in front of the crowd than do what they did, which was sneakily lead them to the back of the room where there was like a
curtain.
A large curtain cordoning off like half the room. They took them behind the curtain and then proceeded to arrest them for, well, actually, he didn't know. I don't think they even told them what the arrest was for at that time.
When they got out of jail, they didn't have the complaint charges.
Right. Yeah, they didn't have any. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing. It's like they're just making stuff up, and they were ordered.
Sure.
They were ordered. I mean, it's pretty obvious what happened. They were ordered by the governor to make arrests, but they didn't know what to arrest these people for, because they didn't actually commit disorderly.
Cook it up later.
They expected them to go in there and be like, vote no, or something.
Right, and
so
they
that's
didn't.
why they were ready. What they were ready for. And
they had dozens of cops. In that
I mean, these activists. I don't know. Yeah, I guess activist is the appropriate word. They knew that this was coming. Like, they knew. I mean, it was pretty apparent. There were so many cops here.
Yeah,
they knew, and that's explicitly why it was a silent protest, so to speak. And nobody. Right. I mean, you could listen to the audio and the video of people recording this, and there wasn't a peep from anybody.
And I was there, but I didn't get to go inside.
Mm-hmm.
And the first person,
because it was at capacity, right?
There was like 100 people outside, just outside protesting, because they couldn't get in. and like 200 inside.
Mm-hmm.
And the first person I saw come out was really upset was our friend Gail Domenico. And she was like, they're snatching people up out of their seats for no reason. Like, she said people that weren't saying anything. She was like almost in tears. She was like so upset.
There was a question early on as to whether or not they were being arrested for disorderly or whatever it was for somehow disrupting it, because there wasn't any disruptions. And so we were wondering, well, are they trying to arrest them for disruption at a prior hearing or something along those lines?
He was confused. Because he didn't know what they were arresting.
Because everybody was quiet until the arrests occurred at a minimum. So it doesn't make sense for them to be arrested for disorderly at that event.
Doesn't make any sense.
It was planned. It was planned. And what else is interesting I thought about this is they went after the leaders of different groups of people. And that's one of the reasons why they know each other, because there was basically different groups coming together kind of.
Right.
So,
which is typical for them. That's how they play it. They target the leaders.
It was clear political attack.
Yep.
And I think the most the most obvious way I think that they were expecting it to go was for everybody to start making a ruckus or whatever.
Sure.
So that's why they had it all set up and ready. Otherwise, they would have just arrested these people at their homes if it was for a prior offense.
That's why they had the whole half of a room cordoned off in the back, because they figured they were going to need to arrest like half the room full of people.
And then they're like, hey, we have all these cars and we're really ready and pumped up to arrest people. So they started arresting anyone that was like, what's going on?
Right.
They separated a woman from her baby.
Yep.
Well, I mean, the crazy thing is,
and a 70-year-old woman got arrested.
Got dragged around.
The crazy thing is that they hadn't even made any noises prior to being arrested. So basically they said amen or pledge of allegiance along with or being led by the governor, though, which is what normally happens.
And so only Therese said amen. Footloose said he didn't say anything.
Right. Well, anyway, but the point is that that was kind of like, I think that was kind of the idea, that she was arrested for saying amen, or that's what the assumption is. But it's absurd. It's the most absurd thing, because that's like kind of that's what happens at these.
It's a prayer.
Right.
I mean, why not say amen?
And if that's her religion, is she getting targeted for her religion? And she's supposed to, under the New Hampshire Constitution,
the whole thing's insane.
She's supposed to have the right to practice her religion however she wants.
As long as she's not disturbing the peace of others. And that's what they're going to allege. They're going to allege that they disturbed the meeting. But I think they have no case.
If they disturbed the meeting, Sununu led the disturbance.
Yeah. I think they have no case personally, and we may see some of these charges get dropped later on, but it'll be interesting to see this when it finally does go to trial. Again, today wasn't the trial. Today, they brought out new charges against Footloose. They charged him with another disorderly conduct for when they took him back. Again, they called it disorderly conduct when they were just sitting there, and then when they were arresting him for that, then he shouted out,
"We're getting arrested!"
Yeah, something like that.
So you know what's interesting?
And they charged him for that.
Yeah. So you know what's interesting too is, and I suspect this is why they're saying that he wasn't under arrest immediately when they brought him to the back, is because if they had, then all those following charges would probably not be usable in court, because it would be like kind of the fruit of the, I think, is that called the fruit of the poisonous tree? That is something, but
that is something.
But basically, fruit of the poisonous tree. Basically, the idea is if the
fruit of the poison tree is generally like if you wrongfully search a house, or if you do a search on a house and it's like illegal or something like that,
and you find something
and
you can't use
something
it.
illegal,
if you're like, for example, if you pull somebody over and your basis for pulling them over is an out tail light, but their tail light isn't out, then anything that you find thereafter can be thrown out.
Nice.
So and this is why I think that they're I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect they might be saying that they weren't under arrest until after he was brought behind the curtain, because otherwise
he wasn't under arrest until after he was brought behind the curtain.
How is that possible? How do you?
He was voluntarily going with them. They asked him to come back.
Yeah.
Excuse me, will you come back here with us? And they got up and did.
The problem though is they still didn't have any basis for asking him to come back there.
They can ask you anything.
That was my rookie mistake when I first got arrested. It was because the cops that came to my work were trying to see if I was drunk, and I was behind a really large desk, and I was like, nope, not drunk, didn't drink, sorry. And then they were like, we need to be closer to you or something. Can you come around the desk? So I was like, okay. I thought I had to because the cop asked me, but
another way to confirm that is you can say to a cop, are you asking or are you ordering?
Yeah.
Or I could have just said, No.
You could just say no. That's true.
I like it here.
You actually don't have to respond at all.
That's
and
true.
you can
Yeah.
just wait for them to arrest you.
I didn't know any of that. I was
That's
an
the other
activist.
thing. Yeah.
You could
I
say,
mean,
why don't you leave?
But
You're not welcome here.
Usually what I do is I just say, I don't answer questions. And when they ask you the question
Yeah, that's
again,
a good
you
one.
just keep repeating yourself.
Yep.
And you sound
That's
like
a
a broken
safe one.
record, but it's pretty apparent. And they're yeah, it's not that hard. You just got to practice a little bit.
I don't take orders. I don't answer questions.
Yeah.
Or I like Jay Noon. I'll take your orders for $50,000 an hour.
Yeah,
Would you like
right.
me to come around the counter? It'll be $50,000.
Yeah.
603-283-6160. But the safest response, I think, is yours, which is I don't answer questions, and then just stare
Repeat.
at them.
Yeah.
Tell them to leave. More coming up here. You can share your thoughts. It's Free Talk Live. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live phones are open here. You can join us. We're talking about the New Hampshire 9 court case. People arrested for victimless crimes of so-called disorderly conduct for simply sitting quietly, in many cases, at the Executive Council meeting last October, where Executive Council was looking to approve $20-something million worth of federal COVID bribe money. With you tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Chris.
So we've been following this case pretty closely. Went to a hearing today in Concord, and it was just a case status conference where they brought out more charges against Footloose, who was the loudest of all of the various different defendants there. And so, and he's also the most interesting character because he is the only one of the 9 who is not being represented by an attorney in the case. And whenever an activist chooses to go pro se, as they call it, it is always a more interesting case because attorneys are, for those that don't know, attorneys are officers of the court. And I don't mean to attack attorneys here to say all of them are bad, because not all of them are bad. Some of them are pretty decent. But the fact is, they all are officers of the court. They all swear an oath of allegiance to the court in order to become an attorney. That's part of the deal. So the attorney, even though they're your attorney, they still have an allegiance to the system.
And it gets kind of even more interesting because they actually all know. I mean, I won't say all know each other, but like these guys went
in
to
New
school
Hampshire
together.
They all know each
Yeah,
other.
it seems
Exactly.
like all the ones associated with Crypto 6 know each other, even the prosecution.
Yeah, you're literally talking to you're basically, they're kind of all on the same team, so to speak, right? You're paying them
to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, you're paying them, but it's yeah.
It's still their job
Their incentive is they want to win their case.
Sure, it's still their job to represent the client as best as they can in the system, within the rules and the structure. When you're an activist who's not an attorney and you have not accepted the representation of an attorney, you've got more leeway. You've got more things that you can do during a court case than the attorney can get away with. You can say things to a judge that an attorney would be disbarred for saying. You can address a jury in a way that an attorney will be like sanctioned, given contempt of court for saying. And so watching Footloose do his thing is always interesting. It's always entertaining because he gets loud. And and it's amazing how little the judges will do about it.
It is, I think, it's interesting. I think this is because in part of how many activists have taken things to court in the past. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think so.
I mean,
because we're talking about courthouses where these judges have not seen a large number of libertarian activists.
Certainly they were
bulk
aware.
Of those happened in Keene.
Yeah, but if something happened in Keene, I feel like a Concord judge would hear about it.
I mean, word does get around. I think it's more the fact that there are cameras in the building, and that makes a huge impact on how these bureaucrats behave.
There were just a couple hundred people here in the packed courtroom.
Not a couple hundred, but it was packed. I mean, it was
100 people maybe.
It's one of the most packed courtrooms I've seen.
Yeah, definitely.
It was standing room only.
Yeah, definitely standing room only.
I don't know how many dozens, but yeah, it was maxed out.
It looked like at least 60, 70.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do an actual count, but when I came into the hallway, I remember thinking, "Oh my God, there's a lot of people here." So that's great. I love it. I love seeing it when people actually come out to support activists at a trial. It's so sad when somebody goes on trial and it's like 3 people come out. Like, come on, we could do so much better. So, like, to the conservative types, credit, they're doing a lot better than the libertarians as far as attending trials is concerned.
I mean, we've been doing it for a lot of years, though.
That's no excuse.
I mean,
we have more people here than ever before, so we should have more people.
There's a lot more conservatives than there are libertarians in New Hampshire.
That's true. That's true.
So I don't know. Look, it's one of these things where it's like we do go to a lot of cases, like a lot of, at least I do.
You and I do,
and so I get it.
I was in 4 courtrooms this week alone. I think you were with me for most of it.
I think so too.
I was in 3, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so I get it. Like, people don't have time, right? And
sure,
but you would think, I agree. You would think that at least amongst the larger population, you would have some people show up besides once in a while. Take a day off work and show up to a case at some point.
It's an interesting affair.
That's funny that you say that because I was going to send out a reminder to our friends to request off work for November 1st now.
Well, one thing I can say for sure is that I know for a fact that there's a lot of people who are planning to take off or just call out sick for the trial for Crypto 6 when that happens.
So just to kind of wrap up the discussion about the New Hampshire 9 situation, again, more charges were brought. They also hit Footloose with a charge that was unrelated to the New Hampshire 9 arrests. He, after, the next month, so sometime in November, he went to a hearing of the state representatives at the Legislative Office building, which was also highly attended. I don't even remember what the issue was that they were there for, but he was at some kind of hearing. He was in the hallway, so he wasn't even in the hearing room. And, of course, he's getting loud like Frank gets loud.
But he doesn't get loud. He just is loud.
Yeah.
That's how he
got
talks.
a loud voice.
Yeah, he's loud.
Yeah.
And so the state police arrest him, and now they arrested him for quote unquote breach of bail at the time. Now they've added a disorderly conduct charge to that one. So
did they get rid of the breach of bail?
No, that one's still there.
What?
So he's now facing 2 disorderly charges for the New Hampshire 9, 1 disorderly charge for being at the Legislative Office building, and a breach of bail, because part of his bail conditions was that he wasn't supposed to be at the Legislative Office building.
Oh, I didn't know.
So they actually restricted, which is to me illegal, because they basically told him you don't have a right to be heard by the legislature.
Yeah,
That's
he wasn't even
nuts.
convicted.
I mean, how can they even restrict you from a public hearing?
That's what they did.
Or anything of that nature, or a protest for that matter. But it's not the first time they did it. They also did. Who was it? There were 2 people that were prohibited from the governor's house at a certain point.
He was one of them, I think.
They also
there.
prohibited nobody as his pre-trial condition that he couldn't speak in public.
Yeah, that was a federal court, but yeah.
There's certainly, it's similar. Not quite what, that's definitely not even what I was thinking of, but yeah, it's certainly very similar.
So we'll keep you in the loop as this develops. Oh, it's also worth mentioning that afterwards, so as soon as the judge leaves the bench, people are getting up there, getting ready to leave, and Footloose turns and he says to one of the prosecutors, who was this bearded guy who you think you'd see in a biker video or at a biker bar or something. He didn't look like a prosecutor. When he walked in, I was surprised when he put a mask on and stood at the prosecutor's table. But he was a prosecutor.
He's the DA, right?
Maybe. I don't know who he was, actually. Maybe I think he worked for the state police in this case.
He was in a safety
Department of Safety
vehicle.
That doesn't surprise me. So yeah, he's probably actually one of their agents who moonlights as a prosecutor.
Yeah, he said. I don't know about that, because he said he wasn't. It wasn't his job, at least, to arrest people. He didn't have that.
So he is their legal guy.
So yeah, it sounded like maybe not a police officer.
Anyway, Footloose turns to him and says, how's that mask work with that beard? Because again, if you've got a beard on, the mask is doing next to nothing. I mean, already the masks are ineffective, but if you've got
he wasn't wearing it outside. He
walked in the courtroom and put it on.
Right.
He was clearly doing it for the judge, who was a masked judge.
Yes.
And not every judge is masked in New Hampshire. So this judge wears a mask. This guy was totally... And Footloose called him out. He said, well, you're signaling. Because the guy admitted, he admitted to Footloose that it's uncomfortable and he didn't like it. He says, oh, well, you're signaling, and he just starts going off on this guy.
Yeah, I saw it. Joe showed me a little clip of it. He was saying, oh, you're touching everything. Where's your hand sanitizer?
These prosecutors and lawyers, they know how to send the message, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order to, what is it? Get favor with the judge.
Sure. Curry favor.
Curry favor with the judge. And that's what they're doing. It's
a game.
It's a game. It literally is a game. And I don't think people people really don't understand who aren't watching this just how much of a game it really is.
Yeah, but it's a game with your life in the balance. It is, and it's pretty sick.
But for them, it's not. They're not risking anything. It's they're playing games with other people's lives.
They just don't know what they're risking. Because they're breaking
You mean
natural...
like being hung or something by the people?
They're breaking natural law, and one day karma will get them.
Mm.
They just don't see the initial
That sounds
effects.
like a mob kind of hanging the politicians or hanging...
That's not what I mean. I'm not talking about violence.
Karma's
I'm not saying you're suggesting violence, but that karma would be something along those lines, because they're getting justice, not necessarily through your
karma
own actions.
Karma can come in different ways.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
But anyway, so then he moves out into the hallway, and everybody's out in the hallway, and this prosecutor comes out there, And I was getting ready to leave, and then I heard commotion, and Footloose is going at it with this guy again. So there's more footage of that where he and this prosecutor's just standing there and just kind of smirking and trying to be snappy back to Footloose, and he's just failing miserably at it. And Footloose calls him an effing tyrant, and it's just
And he called him a retard, and I couldn't stop laughing at that.
I was cringing at that one, but the other ones were
laughed.
good.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
All right, so hour number 2 is coming up here. We'll get into what's going on with the newspaper business. We haven't talked about how those have been failing in a while. We got into it a little bit, I think, when COVID got started. They were already having a tough time prior to COVID, and things got much worse for them then. We can get into whatever's on your mind as well at 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Russia's military has stepped up attacks near the Ukrainian capital Kyiv a day after its large warship, the Moskva, sunk in the Black Sea, which Ukraine said was a result of damage sustained in Ukrainian missile strikes. Russia's Ministry of Defense said it struck a factory near Kyiv that produces long and medium-range missiles, as well as anti-ship missiles. Both sides are now gearing up for a ground war in the east of the country over territories in Ukraine's Donbas region, which have been claimed by Russian separatists. In Washington, U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price said the U.S. and its NATO allies are ready to impose more sanctions on Russia while providing security assistance to Ukraine. He also echoed President Biden's pledge of swift and severe consequences if Russia deploys nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons.
You've heard from the president, you've heard from us that there would be consequences not only from the United States, but we would ensure that those consequences would be severe, would be swift, and would be enacted by our allies and partners around the world.
Twitter has launched a counterattack against Elon Musk's plan for a hostile takeover. The social media company is making a corporate maneuver commonly called a poison pill. FSN's Rachel Silverman has that report from San Francisco.
The so-called poison pill blocks hostile takeovers by giving certain shareholders the right to purchase more stock if an outsider, in this case Elon Musk, tries to take control. That would effectively dilute Musk's stake in Twitter. He recently revealed he had acquired a 9% stake in the social media company and then announced plans to buy Twitter for $43 billion. Musk says his vision for Twitter Twitter includes relaxing its moderation policies. Twitter says the poison pill plan will remain in effect for 1 year. Rachel Silverman, San Francisco.
South Korea is lifting all of its COVID-19 social distancing rules. People will still be required to wear face masks, but from next week, all other restrictions will be lifted for the first time since the pandemic began. Nora Weineck reports.
South Korean Prime Minister Kim Bok-yum says the virus situation has stabilized and the medical system's capabilities are under control. From Monday, smaller businesses will be able to operate freely without a curfew, and a 10-person limit for private gatherings will be removed. The mask mandate, however, will be kept for now as the government monitors the situation. South Korea's daily COVID-19 cases fell below 150,000 this week, down from more than 600,000 cases a day a month ago. The country's Disease Control and Prevention Agency says the current declining trend could continue for some time. Nora Weineck, Tokyo.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, continuing our look at hypersonic missiles after the US, UK and Australia last week announced plans to work jointly on their development amid fears that Russia and China are stealing a march, and in the case of Russia, already used hypersonic missiles on the Ukrainian battlefield. The US has been working on hypersonics for a while and tested one such weapon only last month, but analyst Jim Lindsay of the US-based Council on Foreign Relations says hypersonic research is becoming a new facet of the global arms race.
Countries like China are developing hypersonics because they're concerned that U.S. missile defenses would be able to essentially neutralize their ballistic missile force. Americans see these efforts to try to beat their defenses, so now they're going to invest a lot of money to make sure that they can counter these efforts to evade their defenses, but also so they can pose similar threats to others. And so you get into this arms race competition. And again, a big issue, been much talked about, is can you somehow revive arms control for the 21st century? And the answer so far has been, doesn't look very good.
And he makes the point that in many ways, hypersonic missiles are less useful and less flexible than existing weaponry. But the heated race to acquire them is just one of many fresh setbacks in efforts to revive arms control. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. Russia's military steps up attacks near the Ukrainian capital Kyiv a day after a large Russian warship sinks in the Black Sea. Twitter launches a counterattack against Elon Musk's plans for a hostile takeover. And South Korea lifts all of its COVID-19 social distancing rules for the first time since the pandemic began. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
The Princeton Medical Institute has found that the most common deathbed regret, more than losing contact with family or spending too much time at the office, is never having sprayed a fire extinguisher all over the place.
Similar themes emerged in our interviews with dying patients. Some wished that they'd taken more risks. Others wished that they'd lived a life truer to their dreams. But almost every single person surveyed, regardless of their age or circumstance, said that their most significant regret was never having grabbed a fire extinguisher off a wall and blasted it around a room until it ran out of foam.
I've lived a good life. I was a nurse for 32 years. I have 3 beautiful children, but I've never smashed my elbow into a glass case, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and gone whoosh over everything.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the second hour of the program. Here with you tonight, it's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And Chris.
Phones are open if you want to join us. You can bring up whatever's on your mind. 603-283-6160. So far, we've talked about our court visits today that Chris, you and I participated in Concord, New Hampshire, watching over some activists in court. There's not much more to say about that, but if you want to comment on whatever's on your mind, you can here at 603-283-6160 as we get into a story about old media. And we're part of old media, right? Like we kind of have our foot in two different fields. Bonnie, for instance, is kind of like the new media. Definitely not old. You're kind of like the new media side of the show. You just opened up a TikTok account recently for Free Talk Live.
Okay, wait a minute. You guys got to explain. What is TikTok?
It's a short form video.
Are you just asking that for the purpose of having us explain it, or have you really never heard of TikTok?
I actually don't know what it is, but I've heard of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
you've heard of it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a short form video sharing platform. So it's like, you know how Instagram is all pictures? TikTok is all videos.
Okay.
It's for people with an attention span issue because they can't watch something that's longer than like 10 or 15 seconds.
It's
basically.
for young people.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, these are all things I won't use. So I don't
in
think
my
there's
defense, TikTok for the kind of phones that you would use anyway. It probably requires Google Play services.
Is it like is it an actual app or is it like a website?
It's an app.
It's both.
I don't know if it's a website.
There's a website. Yeah, you can actually go to the website. You can pull up any channel and
Because I was
watch
gonna say,
the
I
stuff.
think a lot of this stuff, like there are apps, but it's not necessarily that you have an app. Kind of like Facebook. There's a Facebook app, but
Yeah,
you don't
I suspect
have to have
the
Facebook.
bulk of their users are on the app. But to their credit, unlike Instagram, where you cannot go on their website and just use Instagram, you have to use their app.
Okay.
If I recall correctly. Or is there a web version? Anyway, what I mean is with Instagram, you have to log in. I think there is a website, but you have to log in to do anything with it.
Yeah, like Facebook.
With TikTok, you can just go to a channel and you can watch anybody's video without having to log in, which is
also,
nice.
it's really easy to just share a video. Like I can just send something to my sister on text instead of in the app, and she can watch it without having an account or anything.
But on the downside, by the way, it's the #1 website. So it actually
Above Google.
It beat Google recently. Like within the last year, it topped Google.
Wait,
for
what
the
are we
most
talking about?
used-
We're talking about TikTok?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a Chinese app, isn't it?
That was the other thing. Yes, it's a Chinese government-run
geez.
app. I mean, it's not technically the government, but it pretty much is.
It's the government.
That's the way things work over there. So
It really is.
Anyway, so we've got we're kind of in both fields, right? We're on the broadcast radio with over 190 great AM and FM radio stations that air this show at various different times throughout the week. So thank you to all the wonderful radio stations we have out there and all the people that listen to us on those stations.
Hey, we're a podcast.
We have a podcast, and we've actually had archives that you can download.
That's new media, right?
It's not even that new anymore. Podcasts came out in 2005.
Technically, they go back farther than that. They just weren't called podcasts.
Well, the RSS feed didn't come out, I don't think, until around then. I don't know when it was invented, but it didn't start being used.
Podcast. That's a good question. I don't know. But podcasts came from iPod though, and I think the RSS stuff came before iPod. So
yeah, I don't know. I remember that we discovered RSS around 2005, and that was sort of the start of podcasts.
Because of the podcast or the iPod, because that was what was becoming popular. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question because before that there was like MP3 players, but
right, MP3s have been around for years prior to that. So we actually, when we started doing Free Talk Live in 2002. We're about to hit 20 years, by the way, of Free Talk Live.
What month?
November. So in 2000, actually, it's like right around the date of the trial.
Yeah, it's very
sad. When we started putting up MP3s from day one. So we've always had that internet component delivery of MP3s for Free Talk Live, and it's kind of tough straddling both worlds because. While we are a radio show first and foremost, we're formatted for radio. We have hours that we do, and there's commercial breaks, and it's hard because like the internet audience, they hate commercials, right? Like you can't. Yeah. They're constantly complaining about the commercials, and I think that's something that holds us back to some extent from being bigger.
It does. I mean, I do an actual podcast, right?
You do a video show, which also has a podcast.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting. It is very different. It's like there's not like, okay, so if you start a few minutes late, no big deal. If you if you end a few minutes early, no big deal. If you go an extra hour, not that big of a deal, right? But with like with radio, it's like, oh, you got to stop on this mark, and if you don't, well, it just it goes on without you anyway because the ads just kind of come up.
Radio, of course, has been around for over 100 years now, as far as there's some radio stations that have actually been around for that long. So it's definitely an old media thing, but it's not the oldest of media. And newspapers, of course, take that award. Newspapers are also the old media that's having the most difficulty surviving in the new media environment. And Chris, you're almost to age 40, not quite, I think, right?
Yep.
I'm in my early 40s. Bonnie, you're in your mid-20s. Have you ever read a newspaper before?
At the Moose Mart.
But like, as you were growing up, did your parents read papers?
We never had a newspaper.
Didn't? Really?
No.
Okay.
They had the news on the TV.
They're in their 50s, so her parents are, Gen X, and they weren't reading newspapers in the last 20 years.
They're in their early 50s. They're not like really old.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's interesting is I remember, my parents got a newspaper, right? I mean, everybody, during my generation.
My parents got one too.
Yeah, right. It wasn't until I was like an adult that nobody was getting newspapers.
But my parents are in their early 70s.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is I always thought, these papers, people today don't understand what a newspaper is because they think it's like a pamphlet, right? Because they're so small.
They're getting way thinner.
Well, also the Keene Sentinel can't have that much to say about Keene on a weekend.
Here's the problem though. I came from a county where, the paper was this thick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's no thicker than the Keene Sentinel. We're talking about like
You're talking
a handful
about the Sunday
of,
edition?
Yeah, the Sunday edition. The Sunday, obviously, because it wasn't.
There's all the ads, there's stuff in there.
But nowadays, it's so
now.
thin. It's a couple of pages. It's like this is what you would call like a newsletter, back in the 80s and 90s. So
yeah, so Bonnie, you have basically no experience with newspapers.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And so that's one of the reasons why they're dying, because young people cannot relate to them. They have no experience with them. And the fact is,
why would you read something on the newspaper where you have to figure out how to unfold it and find the next part? I mean, you could just read the news on your phone.
Indeed.
You know what they don't seem to have?
And it's yesterday's news as well.
And it's interesting because newspapers, and maybe this exists on like the internet too, but it's something that I always remember. There was different sections in the newspaper for like things like word games and like
comics
and those are things that like I mean we have memes now, but like it's not quite the same thing.
Sure.
And it's not like the newspaper.
Well, comics still
right?
exist. They're just online. They've continued.
Sure, I'm sure they exist, but it's not like part of a single medium, I don't think. Or am I wrong?
What do you mean by that? Like they're not all in one place?
Yeah,
kind of thing?
I mean, usually when I'm reading news articles, right? I'm just reading the article. I'm not going to the news site and like going through it.
You're not looking at the rest of the
right. And maybe have you guys looked at an actual newspaper website? Are there still like comics?
You're asking if there's a comic section of that's an interesting question. I've never noticed.
Well, this is what I'm wondering, right?
I never went to a newspaper website. No.
And there were some other things back in the day, like TV listings. You'd always get the TV guide either in the newspaper or
Bonnie's looking at me like, what?
For that week. Yeah, so there was this thing where it would like tell you like what channels
what's on
the show, show, and it will tell you what channel it would be on. Yeah,
it was like
I know
grid.
what
it was
TV guide is, but it's been on my like remote control since I was a kid.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was like press menu.
So before TV guide was a thing, you'd look in the newspaper to find out.
You get a once a week.
It would tell you the upcoming.
Whatever.
Yep, it would tell you the upcoming shows for that week.
There'd be like an article about some television show.
Yeah.
The number 603-283-6160. They actually sold them in stores too. So there was like the one you'd get in the newspaper, and then there was an actual like different brand that you could buy in like a grocery store at checkout. There was a physical TV guide.
Oh yeah,
I think I've seen those.
Yeah, they may still have them. I don't know.
I doubt it.
The number not for long, probably. 603-283-6160. We'll talk about the dying business of newspapers. What's happening now? It's Free Talk Live.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. The phones are open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. If you're not so stuck in your ways and you're willing to consider new ideas, you should learn about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. Get over to Bitcoin.com. Click Get Started at the top of the page. There's no age limit on Bitcoin. You can be as old or as young as long as you can read and understand ideas. Go click Get Started at the top of the page over at Bitcoin.com. They got some easy-to-watch videos there. The first one's all of 3 minutes long, so if you're time-sensitive, you can go and get a little bit of information, learn some of the basics about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash over at Bitcoin.com. Just click Get Started at the top. Now, if you're into crypto already and you want to get the latest news headlines, they got that for you too. Just head over and go to news.bitcoin.com. That's news.bitcoin.com. We were going to talk about newspapers and how they're cutting back on even more of their printings. And I do want to get into that, but since we ended up talking about like old media, new media, somehow we got off on a TV Guide. And I think it was part of, we were talking about newspapers and what they included.
Yeah.
And it made me think of the magazine, the actual physical thing that you would see at like a grocery store checkout line back in the day. And it made me wonder, well, how's that doing? Because magazines are also hurting big time as far as the print industry in general is hurting. Books obviously are competing now with ebooks. TV Guide, these magazines, a lot of them have completely gone out of business. TV Guide apparently is not out of business at this point. However,
really?
Yep. According to Wikipedia,
they're still in business.
There's still somebody out there that wants to get the physical thing they can hold in their hands to tell them what's on the old telly.
I can't even comprehend where who is where do you even acquire something like that nowadays?
I presume at a grocery store or a magazine.
I bet, you know where I was thinking I probably have seen them? On military bases.
Probably
I
true.
wonder if they don't really exist outside of a licensing model now, because they license the data to cable channels or cable TV companies or something like that. Because I can't imagine that they're making it off the actual like physical print guide.
Well, they were losing a lot of money, apparently, according to the Wikipedia article here. October of 2008, Macrovision, the owner at the time, sold the money-losing magazine, which was posting revenue losses of $20 million per year at that point, to another company called OpenGate Capital for $1 and a $9.5 million loan at interest. As part of the sale, though, Macrovision retained ownership of the companion website, which they then sold that off for $300 million. So the website was worth a lot more than the actual magazine. And so then it goes on. But basically, according to an article that was written in 2015, looks like they have sold this thing. This thing has changed hands 3 times in 8 years. So one company buys it, another company buys it, and then another company buys it. And they're still around. The last number I saw, which might have been an article from 2015, so it's obviously a little dated as far as its numbers, they had 1.8 million actual subscribers. So apparently they're mailing these things to people.
Wow.
Still.
Yeah, and it's even more amazing because cable TV is dead, right? I mean, who has cable TV nowadays?
Old people.
Yeah, I know, that's it.
Right,
and they're dying off.
Yeah,
so
that's why Fox News and CNN and MSNBC's audiences are shrinking, because literally their audiences are dying off.
The only people I know with cable television are like over 70 at this point.
Yep. So that's your update on TV Guide. If you're still a subscriber, you're welcome to give us a call.
I would love to call. I would love somebody to call in and tell us that they still subscribe to TV Guide and get like something in the mail.
Oh, can I mention what we were talking about on the break about Neopets?
Sure.
I said something.
What is Neopets?
You have to define it first. Yeah.
www.neopets.com
it's a website.
Is a website, and it has games on it, but it's not just games. It's not just you play to feed your pets. You can do all kinds of stuff, like you can buy things, and you can have auctions and have your own shop. You can join guilds.
Well, you could when Flash existed, right?
When Flash existed, and now a lot of the site is down because they're converting it to HTML5. But I mentioned something about Neopets because, Chris was talking about dial-ups, and I said I did have a dial-up in my house, dial-up modem or whatever in my house.
Oh, wow.
But it was only when I was like 7 years old, and I'd be trying to play Neopets. My mom would be on the phone with my grandma, and I'd be so annoyed because I couldn't get on the internet. And Chris said that he helped his younger brother, who was into Neopets, create a cheat site website.
Well, hold on. To be clear, I never recall it being a cheat site, but I think you're probably right. It probably would be, I guess, classified as a cheat site.
Oh, that's what I would call it. I think that I might have frequented a website that Chris did the coding to as a kid.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah.
So cool.
There's actually a good possibility of it. The site was actually pretty popular for a while, for a long time. And then there were some competitors, though.
Yeah, there was several. Sunny Neo's the one I can think of, but you said that doesn't ring a bell. But there was lots of different ones that I'd go on.
Doesn't ring a bell, but I don't even remember the name of the website. So to be clear, I wrote some back-end code for this site. I didn't do any of the front-end stuff. So I don't really, and it was like like over like a couple of weeks in one summer or something like that. So
that'd be so cool though.
I actually didn't even know how the game worked when I wrote the code. So that's how little I know. But I remember Neopets, like that was it. Yeah.
So I do have an updated subscriber count for the TV Guide. Remember, it was 1.8 million in 2015. As of 2020, it was 1.1. So
yeah, they're dying off.
That's a business that is not likely going to survive.
I bet you COVID too shrunk that number.
Oh, by the way, they're also no longer a weekly publication. They're bi-weekly now. So you don't get to get it. So they've cut their printing, which is what I want to talk about with the newspapers. They started cutting print runs of newspapers, started cutting out days. I don't know, within the last decade, it started happening at major newspapers. Of course, many newspapers have gone under completely. They're just out of business. They're never coming back. Story here from, let's see, looks like MSN, Microsoft News. When she was a child, Sandy Auburn's father read the comics to her. Eventually, she learned to read them to him. As an adult, she developed another newsprint ritual with her husband, swapping sections of her local Ohio newspaper back and forth with him over breakfast. She especially enjoyed a recent series on black-owned businesses in town. But now the local paper is throwing a wrench into her rhythms. After more than 100 years of publication, Ohio's Akron Beacon Journal has stopped printing on Mondays, when it instead offers readers a digital version of the newspaper. So they still have news, they're still coming up with stories, they're still publishing them, they're just only making them available online on Mondays, and maybe they'll print some of them the next day.
So do they have a daily newspaper and now it's every day except Monday?
That's right. So it's no longer daily.
Yeah, this is a weird one. Usually I'm always like saddened to hear like stuff, like especially stuff that's been around for a long time, like POTS lines, plain old telephone lines, yeah. Go away, right? That's another thing that's going away, right? But I don't know, like I don't necessarily know I have a strong attachment to newspapers,
no,
like just traditional newspapers.
I don't have a strong attachment to telephone lines. They're ugly in the sky. I'd rather them be buried.
Okay, so this might be because I understand why telephone, like plain old telephone lines, are actually have value, and it's because they don't, like, when you lose power, you don't
still
lose,
run.
Right, they still work. So, and your cell phone doesn't.
A slight amount of power over the line.
Fiber doesn't do the same thing?
No, not necessarily, because I mean it has to be it only lasts as long as the battery works, basically battery backup. So
we got more coming up here about old things going away. Specifically, in this case, newspapers. They're on the way out. If you want to weigh in on it, though, the number is 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Russia's military has stepped up attacks near the Ukrainian capital Kyiv a day after its large warship, the Moskva, sunk in the Black Sea, which Ukraine said was a result of damage sustained in Ukrainian missile strikes. Russia's Ministry of Defense said it struck a factory near Kyiv that produces long and medium-range missiles, as well as anti-ship missiles. Both sides are now gearing up for a ground war in the east of the country over territories in Ukraine's Donbas region, which have been claimed by Russian separatists. In Washington, U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price said the U.S. and its NATO allies are ready to impose more sanctions on Russia while providing security assistance to Ukraine. He also echoed President Biden's pledge of swift and severe consequences if Russia deploys nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons.
You've heard from the president, you've heard from us that there would be consequences not only from the United States, but we would ensure that those consequences would be severe, would be swift, and would be enacted by our allies and partners around the world.
Twitter has launched a counterattack against Elon Musk's plan for a hostile takeover. The social media company is making a corporate maneuver commonly called a poison pill. FSN's Rachel Silverman has that report from San Francisco.
The so-called poison pill blocks hostile takeovers by giving certain shareholders the right to purchase more stock if an outsider, in this case Elon Musk, tries to take control. That would effectively dilute Musk's stake in Twitter. He recently revealed he had acquired a 9% stake in the social media company and then announced plans to buy Twitter for $43 billion. Musk says his vision for Twitter includes relaxing its moderation policies. Twitter says the poison pill plan will remain in effect for 1 year. Rachel Silverman, San Francisco.
South Korea is lifting all of its COVID-19 social distancing rules. People will still be required to wear face masks, but from next week, all other restrictions will be lifted for the first time since the pandemic began. Nora Weineck reports.
South Korean Prime Minister Kim Bok-yum says the virus situation has stabilized and the medical system's capabilities are under control. From Monday, smaller businesses will be able to operate freely without a curfew, and a 10-person limit for private gatherings will be removed. The mask mandate, however, will be kept for now as the government monitors the situation. South Korea's daily COVID-19 cases fell below 150,000 this week, down from more than 600,000 cases a day a month ago. The country's Disease Control and Prevention Agency says the current declining trend could continue for some time. Nora Weineck, Tokyo.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. The phones are open here. You can join us at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking about the newspaper business, the print business in general. We covered magazines a little bit, but the newspaper business cutting back on their printing schedules. This has actually been going on for some time. But of course, it's as time goes on, it's harder and harder to exist in that business still. So one of the ways that you can cut costs is by cutting out print runs. And so the Akron, Ohio Beacon Journal has now stopped printing on Mondays. Our local newspaper here in Keene, New Hampshire, which is, I believe, the oldest in the state. It's a very, very old paper. It was started
How is it the oldest in the state?
Keene Sentinel?
I mean, Keene was not founded before the rest of the state. That's for sure. Obviously, the coastal areas were founded sooner, but I believe it is the oldest in the state, if I recall correctly.
It's only 20,000 people. You think Manchester or Nashua or
it was founded in the late 1700s
or something would have a longer running newspaper.
It's been around for a long time. And they cut back. Apparently, I didn't know about this because I don't read the Keene Sentinel.
Yeah, fair enough.
But Bonnie is she works at the Mighty Moose Mart here in town, and they have the physical newspaper on the front counter. There's usually only like 2 copies because I suspect they don't sell very many of them. But I noticed when I was in there the other day, it said weekend edition on it. I thought, oh, they don't have a Saturday and Sunday edition separately anymore.
Oh.
They have a quote unquote weekend edition now.
Interesting.
So, and this is after in like 2007, I think they raised the price from 25 cents to 75 cents for the daily paper, and then they jacked up the Sunday rate to like $1.50 or something like that.
And they made the pages smaller too,
They made
right?
the pages, the width of the pages came down, so they didn't fit in the newspaper boxes correctly anymore. They had to like buy these bars on like these to cover up the sides, basically cover ups essentially to make it look like it fit. And they also cut down the number of pages as well, so the paper is physically thinner. And again, it's been years since they did a lot of this stuff, but I think they recently got rid of the
Saturday and Sunday separate
Saturday,
editions.
Sunday separates, yeah. So let's go to your calls and thoughts here. We're talking about the decline of the print business, specifically newspapers. Olivia, you're on Free Talk Live, listening in Arizona. Olivia? Oh, sorry, I had you muted. Go ahead.
Hey, so yeah, newspapers are near and dear to my heart. I think it goes back to like arts and crafts in school when you cut up the newspapers and make paper mache. I was always the kid like reading them and cutting out articles and reading the comics.
Can you say you don't? I know you're a lady. You don't have to say how old you are, but can you say like generally, like in how old you might be?
I was born in 1990, so I'm 31.
Okay.
I'm a Cancer.
So you're actually fairly young for somebody that has a fond memory of newspapers.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of one of those people who kind of gravitates towards older things, I think.
Were your parents newspaper subscribers? Did you get one every morning at the house where you were growing up?
Actually, I lived in a small town where there was like a free shopper paper that was like a free local paper that they gave you every Wednesday, which was pretty cool. It did like local articles, and I remember like sometimes on Sundays my mom would go buy a newspaper, and I would read, and there was always stuff that like you wouldn't know any other way. So like when they discover a new species, there was a thing, and I'd clip it out and like stick it in this big book of animals that I had as a kid, and I don't know. I would just turn I read about this in Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. I'm not the only person who did this, but like I'd turn my books into time capsules. I'd clip out articles related to a subject of a book I'd have, and I'd just stick it in there like a bookmark. And there's people who use them for art things. You know, they'll circle words and black out everything else and make a blackout poem. I just read the newspaper actually a few days ago, and that was the only.
That was going to be my next question, was to see how long it had been since you'd actually picked up a newspaper. So just a few days.
Yeah, well, actually, I got one today. I haven't read it yet, but
wow.
I found out that they're going to discontinue the penny. That's the only place that I've really seen that. And
What?
then they covered some homeless.
Hold on a second.
Oh, you didn't hear about that?
No, they're discontinuing the penny. Is that for real?
That's what it said. You'd have to look it up.
Whoa. Well, that's something that's actually a long time coming, as far as it makes no sense to have the penny because it costs more than it actually is worth.
Well, it's the advertising is where the money is.
Well, you're right, Olivia, that...
Hold on. What?
Well, with newspapers, advertising is where they really made their money. It wasn't the cost of the newspaper.
No. She just said they're going to discontinue the penny. She says she saw it in the newspaper that they're going to discontinue.
I thought the penny was the name of a...
You thought it was the paper.
Paper. Yeah.
You mean the actual physical penny, like change, right? That's what you're talking about, Olivia?
Right.
Yeah, I thought there was like a type of newspaper or something, or the name of a newspaper called the penny or something like that. I'm probably wrong, or it's like some UK paper or something. But
wow, I'm shocked that we actually missed that news. That's very interesting. We'll talk about that coming up here in a few moments.
One thing she's right about newspapers is that there's a lot of local stuff that I feel like I'd never hear about if I didn't see it at the paper where I work. Like she was about to say something about like homeless stuff in her town, and I was actually seeing something about that on Keene today. They're gonna build a homeless shelter where Wheelock Park is.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I didn't read the whole thing.
All right, Olivia, anything else you want to share about your newspaper fondness?
Yeah, since I like older things, I'd always watch like 1970s shows like Kolchak, The Night Stalker, and stuff like that. And there was always this mystique about being a newspaper reporter and being on the beat. And maybe part of my love for newspapers is that too. Like that's a job that someone gets to go interview people and sit down and write, and it just feels like such an intimate kind of medium to me.
Thanks for
someone sat down and
Yeah, thanks for sharing that thought with us here tonight. Definitely appreciate your experience. It's interesting to talk to somebody so young, younger than you and I, Chris, a little older than you, Bonnie, that still buys newspapers. That's shocking.
And it's kind of interesting too, just because it's more like make-up stories these days.
Makeup stories?
Yeah, like it used to be like there was some like tangent of like, oh, they'll reach out to somebody for like a quote or whatever. Now they just make the stuff up.
Oh, you're saying they're not doing good journalism.
Yeah, the
now.
journalism quality is just really degraded.
It's tanked.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of papers are leaning heavily on the AP and syndicated sources. They're just sort of reprinting syndicated stuff, maybe not doing so much local reporting. Although to the Sentinel's credit, they are still doing local reporting. I remember going in there several years ago, and it's been some time since I've been in there, but I remember thinking, I think it was like 2015 when I went in there to be interviewed for I was running for office at the time, and I remember being shocked at how bustling their newsroom was. I was like, wait, how can this be? It's 2015.
Even in 2015.
Yeah. So And the other thing that happened with the Sentinel, I actually wrote a story about it years ago, and it'd be interesting to do an update on it now, because all papers publish their circulation numbers, right? Like that's a thing.
Yeah.
That's something they want you to know if you're an advertiser, right? Because it's the number one question that an advertiser is going to ask is, what's your circulation? How many subscribers do you have? How many print copies do you sell in the boxes every day or at local stores or whatever? What's your quote-unquote pass-around rate? And that one's a little harder, I imagine harder to determine. Pass-around rate is where somebody buys a paper and then they hand it to somebody when they're done reading it. So that counts for an extra set of eyeballs. But they can definitely tell you how many subscribers they have.
How did they get that number?
I have no idea. That's a great question. Maybe a survey of subscribers. But the subscriber numbers have fallen off a cliff. And this was as of, again, like 2013 was when I wrote this article. I mean, it was down from pretty healthy in the 90s to just like 7,000 or something.
You know what's interesting, though, is I don't know if this is... I don't know if you guys think this is true or not, or feel like it's like a truth, but I still see a lot of local stuff. It's just online. But yeah.
The number 603-283-6160. So a little bit more here. The Akron Beacon Journal now not printing on Mondays. She says, your first thought, as our aunt would have said, oh, good grief, said the reader. It's a change, and for some of us, the paper has been part of our lives. For more than 2 decades, industry sages have been predicting the death of the printed newspaper, and now a growing number of local publishers are cutting back on print editions, pointing to rising costs and arguing consumers will prefer the immediacy and convenience of online news. We'll tell you more about it on the way here. The number is 603-283-6160. Are you still a newspaper subscriber? This is Free Talk Live.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. Saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
Besides, we just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
All right, it's Free Talk Live. Talking about old media, specifically print media, the situation with newspapers trying desperately to survive in a new media environment where, as Bonnie puts it, why in the world would you want to try to open a piece of paper, unfold it, figure out where the article continues, just to read a thing that you could just pull up online?
That was so annoying back in the day when you have to, you start reading a blurb and then you have to, go to another page and section. Yep. You flip through pages, and
that's a trick to get you to look at advertising.
Yeah, it is.
I think the only real reason somebody could have for preferring that is nostalgia. And I'm not saying, oh, that's a terrible reason and I want to burn all newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
If you want that, I hope that there's an option for you where you live. But I also don't care if they all die.
Yeah, I mostly just, the reporting is so bad. It's like I really have no sympathy. I have no, it's just like, it's one of these things where it's like, how do I support something when they're always pro-government, they're always misleading people.
Yeah, why would you want to pay for
It's so
that?
manipulative. Right, I don't want to support this.
Yeah, if there was a libertarian newspaper just for the Free State Project, that would be really cool.
And
I might be into that.
And the funny thing is, I actually have contributed to financially to certain media type outlets, but not traditional newspapers. It's more covering certain topics or something like that, or certain industries or whatever, right?
There actually have been Free Stater-run newspapers here in Keene, as a matter of fact, over the years. There used to be what was called the Keene Free Press, and there was the New Hampshire Free Press. Both of those were run by Russell Canning. And
what happened to them?
Well, Russell left.
He's back now, I think.
He is coming back.
Was he doing it just from his house?
I think they were printing with some professional printer. I don't remember who was doing their print jobs, but
I remember Daryl's.
Daryl also
had one. I remember I think he had if I recall, I'm pretty sure.
FPP News.
I'm pretty sure he had a crypto thing in the newspaper where you could donate to it.
Yep, I think you did.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, I donated all the time to that.
And so those all existed in Keene. I've never heard of another Free Stater newspaper outside of Keene, so Keene's kind of like the hot spot for Liberty Media. But
I think right now that could be big. Every time there was a Free Stater thing passed in the House, they could get a story.
Well, the problem, of course, with and people did take them. There's no doubt about that. The problem with doing a newspaper, and I think one of the reasons why Daryl ended up stopping, was because, first of all, you really can't make money at it. It's not an easy thing to do. It's an activism project, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And then as far as activism is concerned, it takes a lot of time. The actual physical act of going out to your locations that you've managed. So you have to secure locations in which you can put the paper, right? So you have to talk to business owners and see if they'll let you put the paper in their shop, or if you can put a machine outside, or whatever. And he actually did have like a paper dispenser machine thing, whatever you want to call it. You didn't pay for it. It was just you just opened it and free papers. He had I think a couple of those in downtown Keene. One of them was over across from Corner News.
The one I always saw was the one at Local Burger. Because
that was the one.
Yeah,
there was one there.
There was a machine.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's machine's the right word. The box that you open the door to, and
I don't
it's
know
not really a machine.
I don't know the box that you're talking about. I've never seen.
You might not have been here when Daryl was doing the paper.
I've seen those in general.
Oh,
Well, no. I was here when he was doing the paper. I just don't remember there being a box.
There's more than one. He had a couple of them.
Okay.
But one of the other problems is if you've got a group of haters in town, then they might just come and take all of your newspapers out of the box.
Well,
and then, so there's that. And it's time consuming, right? You've got to physically go and drop those things off every week or whatever.
Yeah, just doing nobody's newsletter was taking a lot out of me.
Right, and you were mailing that to people. So
yeah, but he has stopped. I think he's not gonna. Maybe he'll pick up again one day. Maybe when his trial's over. But it's just that there's a lot going on in his life.
It really is a lot of work to write and then to also get it printed and then to also put it out there.
Yeah.
In order to make it worthwhile, you've actually got to have numbers, right? And unfortunately, building it up to a point where you have numbers is hard, especially when people are not going to a physical media source anymore. They're going online.
Value it.
Yeah. So it just makes sense more to do a website of some kind, and then
yeah, like the Liberty Block is like the online newspaper for the libertarians.
He does a great job over there.
Yeah, he does.
FreeKeene.com's been around since 2006, and we are generally considered a news source in the Keene area.
Honestly, it's one of the better ones, if you ask me.
But it is obviously opinionated news.
Oh,
anyway,
absolutely. But but the thing I like about it is, more often than not, you'll get cited. There'll be citations for like where you're getting your information from, as opposed to your average newspaper. It's literally they'll just take whatever the government says and then they won't get the other side, or they'll get like one little quote and they'll manipulate it into you sounding terrible or whatever.
So in other news about newspapers, Gannett, the largest newspaper chain in the country, last month eliminated 1 day of print per week at 136 of its newspapers, including the Beacon Journal. Another 50 papers will make the change by June, with most losing Saturday print editions. Subscribers can download digital copies of the print paper or e-editions on those days. That's interesting. So they're actually still doing the work to do a layout of that paper. They're just not printing it. So you can download a PDF version of it.
Why would you do that? I would think you'd have it just in a website format, like a format that actually works for computers.
I think
it's an e-reader, so it might look better than just a PDF of what the newspaper looks like.
Yeah, maybe for people that have the tablets or whatever, they want to look at that.
Maybe
it's a transition thing for older folks that are trying to get online. I think is why they're doing it that way. Just for people that want to sort of see it in the old format. Executives insist readers will get the same quality of journalism. Gannett's senior vice president of local news, Emily Nash, said there are particular pressures on print publications, including significant print costs, inflation, and a shortage of drivers that has left 1 out of 10 delivery routes unstaffed. So they just don't have the people, and the costs are going up dramatically. In fact, they're going to get into the numbers here. It's kind of interesting. She says our focus is always on trying to keep as many resources as possible in our newsrooms, and so looking at the part of the business where we're seeing declines, we have to mitigate for that and make sure that we're doing the right strategic moves for the future of the business. Our business is journalism, and that's at the core of what we do. But the Gannett papers are not the first to go in this direction. The Plain Dealer in Cleveland scaled back to 3 days of home delivery years ago. McClatchy, which owns 30 newspapers in the United States, announced in 2019 they would be cutting Saturday out. Citing the pandemic, Tampa Bay Times reduced their printing to just twice a week. I mean, that barely exists as a print publication.
Wait, twice a week?
Twice a week, from a daily, 7-day-a-week publication. Tampa Bay Times, that's the paper of record in Tampa, Florida.
Really?
To twice a week.
Interesting.
Some newspapers have eliminated daily print editions, including Arkansas and Tennessee papers that embarked on an iPad giveaway experiment to help print subscribers transition. The newspaper is cutting back on print and training readers to use iPads instead. Will it work? And now inflation and supply chain issues are driving supply costs through the roof. In an earnings call last month, the publisher and president of the Dallas Morning News, which still prints daily, said the company's newsprint costs had soared to about $720 per metric ton, up from just $520 per metric ton just 2 years ago. So you're talking about a nearly 50% increase in print costs to get their paper out the door, let alone the gas that their delivery drivers are going to have to spend.
Are they delivering by car nowadays?
How else would they do it?
Bike? Kids?
Well,
I mean, isn't that how newspapers were delivered?
The Keene Sentinel, just these two, I don't know how old, but they're not kids, adult people, drive up to the Moose Mart.
Yep.
And the lady comes in and takes our ones that didn't sell.
Take the old ones.
Gives us the new ones.
How many sell per day? I mean, you're never there for a full day, so you probably don't know. But I wonder how many y'all sell per day.
I've probably sold one.
Ever.
I remember selling one to Aria.
I have to ask, was that me?
No, I remember recently selling one to Aria, and it was because she wanted to paint in her house, not because she wanted to
put it down. Oh, wow.
Newspaper.
I have to say, I've bought newspapers in the past year and a half, but it's mostly because of the Crypto 6 stories I've been published.
Yeah, every now and then it's fun to buy
you want to have a copy of some of this stuff.
See where they actually put the thing.
Yeah.
Or put the story. Is it on the front page or above the fold?
Yeah.
Oh, and I was actually looking online, and apparently I was talking about how I did a story on the Keene Sentinel almost a decade ago, how its subscription rates had fallen off a cliff from it's basically the 90s to the aughts. Wait,
you mean you did a story on freekeene.com?
Yes, at freekeene.com about the Keene Sentinel, the local newspaper, and how they literally had half in 2013, half of the subscribers as they did in the late 90s. And in that article, I mentioned that they'd raised their rates on the daily edition to 75 cents and $1.50 for the Sunday. And now, apparently, it's $2 for the daily edition.
$3 for the weekend.
That wouldn't surprise me. The number here is 603. And again, the paper's thinner than ever.
Yeah.
There's less content than ever. 603-283-6160. I mean, the writing is clearly on the wall. I don't know how many more years these guys have left. The newspapers. More coming up. Hour 3's on the way. It's Free Talk Live. Share your thoughts. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Russia's military has stepped up attacks near the Ukrainian capital Kyiv a day after its large warship, the Moskva, sunk in the Black Sea, which Ukraine said was a result of damage sustained in Ukrainian missile strikes. Russia's Ministry of Defense said it struck a factory near Kyiv that produces long and medium-range missiles, as well as anti-ship missiles. Both sides are now gearing up for a ground war in the east of the country over territories in Ukraine's Donbas region, which have been claimed by Russian separatists. In Washington, U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price said the U.S. and its NATO allies are ready to impose more sanctions on Russia while providing security assistance to Ukraine. He also echoed President Biden's pledge of swift and severe consequences if Russia deploys nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons.
You've heard from the president, you've heard from us that there would be consequences not only from the United States, but we would ensure that those consequences would be severe, would be swift, and would be enacted by our allies and partners around the world.
Twitter has launched a counterattack against Elon Musk's plan for a hostile takeover. The social media company is making a corporate maneuver commonly called a poison pill. FSN's Rachel Silverman has that report from San Francisco.
The so-called poison pill blocks hostile takeovers by giving certain shareholders the right to purchase more stock if an outsider, in this case Elon Musk, tries to take control. That would effectively dilute Musk's stake in Twitter. He recently revealed he had acquired a 9% stake in the social media company and then announced plans to buy Twitter for $43 billion. Musk says his vision for Twitter includes relaxing its moderation policies. Twitter says the poison pill plan will remain in effect for 1 year. Rachel Silverman, San Francisco.
South Korea is lifting all of its COVID-19 social distancing rules. People will still be required to wear face masks, but from next week, all other restrictions will be lifted for the first time since the pandemic began. Nora Weineck reports.
South Korean Prime Minister Kim Bok-kyum says the virus situation has stabilized and the medical system's capabilities are under control. From Monday, smaller businesses will be able to operate freely without a curfew, and a 10-person limit for private gatherings will be removed. The mask mandate, however, will be kept for now as the government monitors the situation. South Korea's daily COVID-19 cases fell below 150,000 this week, down from more than 600,000 cases a day a month ago. The country's Disease Control and Prevention Agency says the current declining trend could continue for some time. Nora Weineck, Tokyo.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, continuing our look at hypersonic missiles after the US, UK and Australia last week announced plans to work jointly on their development amid fears that Russia and China are stealing a march, and in the case of Russia, already used hypersonic missiles on the Ukrainian battlefield. The US has been working on hypersonics for a while and tested one such weapon only last month, but analyst Jim Lindsay of the US-based Council on Foreign Relations says hypersonic research is becoming a new facet of the global arms race.
Countries like China are developing hypersonics because they're concerned that U.S. missile defenses would be able to essentially neutralize their ballistic missile force. Americans see these efforts to try to beat their defenses, so now they're going to invest a lot of money to make sure that they can counter these efforts to evade their defenses, but also so they can pose similar threats to others. And so you get into this arms race competition. And again, a big issue, been much talked about, is can you somehow revive arms control for the 21st century? And the answer so far has been, doesn't look very good.
And he makes the point that in many ways, hypersonic missiles are less useful and less flexible than existing weaponry. But the heated race to acquire them is just one of many fresh setbacks in efforts to revive arms control. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. Russia's military steps up attacks near the Ukrainian capital Kyiv a day after a large Russian warship sinks in the Black Sea. Twitter launches a counterattack against Elon Musk's plans for a hostile takeover. And South Korea lifts all of its COVID-19 social distancing rules for the first time since the pandemic began. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
This is the Onion Week in Review. A study published Friday by the University of Minnesota found that mosquitoes have no physiological reason for biting humans, with researchers noting that the insects feed exclusively on pollen and seemingly only suck human blood out of spite.
According to our findings, mosquitoes usually spit out the blood after a bite. They just really enjoy ruining outdoor activities and spreading deadly diseases.
Researchers added that mosquitoes often bite a variety of vertebrates besides humans, including baby pandas, koala bears, and very small puppies, all for fun. And in tech news, a new Visa talking credit card urges buyers to go for it.
Come on, buy it. You
know you want it.
In other news, the utterance of a secret password grants customers access to a long-rumored 18-inch Subway sandwich. It's easy to tell what an area man would look like as a skeleton, and a longtime teacher retires without changing a single student's life. This week's scheduled interview with the surly and forlorn Matthew Modine was cut for time and is doomed to never be seen. For more, visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. You're welcome to join us here. You can bring up whatever you want to discuss. We kick off the third hour of the show. I didn't know this. We found out from Olivia, who called in earlier tonight. Apparently, they're serious about this. This is not some sort of April Fool's joke. They're going to stop producing the penny.
Nice.
And that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
I want to get into it. Coming up here, we're going to go to the phone calls. Your calls and thoughts are welcome at 603-283-6160. And in the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
And Bonnie.
And Chris.
We're also talking about the slowly shrinking print business. Specifically, in this case, newspapers. Their costs are rising dramatically as far as what it costs to actually print a newspaper. Of course, distributing it is another challenge because you have to have actual humans to go out and do that. And of course, everyone's hiring right now because it's hard to find workers. Well, guess what? It's hard to find newspaper deliverymen as well. And so some companies are just cutting back and not printing as much as they used to. They're just cutting out entire days of print runs. If you want to weigh in, you're welcome to join us. Let's go to your phone calls and thoughts. Rob is in Vermont. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, so I think that the reason why a lot of these newspapers are shrinking is because I don't think the people, the public, I don't think that they don't participate in it. I think that they rather participate like on a website or Facebook or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think a lot of times too that with the newspaper that whenever there's something that's gone on, I mean specifically even in the town of where the paper's at, a lot of times you don't even hear about it.
You don't hear about it, or you do hear about it?
You do not.
Oh.
Well, if you don't read the paper, of course, you probably wouldn't hear about it.
Right, but still, I don't know. I think another problem is that the honesty. I think it's really gone away. I think they just.
You said the honesty? You're saying honesty has gone away? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you ever known a government official to tell you the truth?
No,
Well,
of course not.
Even if somebody isn't a paid government agent working for these newspapers, they've already been government indoctrinated if they went to journalism school in college. So.
Exactly.
Oh, wait, this is actually interesting point that we were talking about on off air here. The government is actually paying reporters now and sending them to work at newspapers on behalf of the newspapers.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That reminds me of a story from years ago where there was a paper in, I believe it was the town of Claremont, New Hampshire. And Claremont is kind of one of those dying towns. It's sort of known as, it's tough to be in business in Claremont. People are moving out of it kind of thing. And the newspaper also was dying. And so the government bought or like gave the paper a bunch of money or something like that.
Was
to
this
stay
the
in
local
business.
government or a federal
I believe
government?
it was the state.
The state did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
In order to keep the quote-unquote newspaper of record around. You remember hearing about that, Rob, years ago? You kind of live over in the area.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same old, hey, we'll scratch your back if you'll scratch our back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's always been that way for decades.
Now, Rob, we know you. You're a local activist here in the area. You're a longtime listener of Free Talk Live, and you're one of our older friends. So you're in your late 50s, early 60s?
I'm 58 years old.
Late 50s. Are you still a newspaper user? Do you still pick them up from time to time?
Well, I mean, I read the Shopper.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally I'll read like the Reformer or something. I mean, depends on
the shopper. For listeners that don't know, is a one-time weekly freebie that comes around. But when's the last time you actually bought a newspaper?
I don't know, like last week.
Okay, all right. So
yeah, because our town mayor, well, not mayor, but he was town manager of the town where I live at. He abruptly just resigned. I don't know why. But it was in the front page of the paper.
So you wanted to find out about that?
Exactly.
That's why you read it. Okay, I got you.
Right, but I mean, it didn't say why he resigned. It just for health reasons, whatever. I don't know. It didn't exactly say.
Didn't really give you the info you were looking for. Rob, thanks for the call tonight, man. I definitely appreciate hearing from you.
That's typical news these days.
Yeah.
Don't really tell you about the story. Yeah. And they just quote some government source and then don't really answer the question.
Go to Sarah. I think she said she was in her 60s when we spoke with her before. Sarah, are you still a newspaper user?
Newspaper user? Well, you know something? I do read the newspaper once in a while. If they publish my letters, they have the editorial page, and it's funny. And then a lot of people have read my articles, like representatives, state representatives. My friends call me. I saw your article. So it's really interesting, and
so you would not purchase a local newspaper unless you had heard that your story or that your letter was printed within.
Well, yeah, basically, yeah. And I would cut it out.
Wow.
Well, I mean, we have to call the news station. Did my letter get published? And a lot of my friends that like the red light cameras, they're like, when was it published? They want to get that newspaper too. They get excited with me. You know what I mean? So,
Sarah has a bunch of friends that like red light cameras.
That's all I ever talk about. I mean, what else am I going to write about? Speeding bans and red light cameras, and then they published about 3 of my letters, and I would call all my friends that go to these meetings, like I got my letter published, read it.
So how often do you get published? I mean, obviously you call into this show a lot, so do you get on the local paper once a week or once a month? How often are you in there?
Well, I used to write. They did publish 3 of my letters a couple of times, and I was talking to one of the
that didn't answer my question.
Senators.
No.
I don't. Okay.
You said you had like 3 of your letters published. That could be over the last 30 years. I'm asking you, how often do they publish you? How often do you write to them, and how often do you get published?
Well, that was about within the span of 8 years. So,
okay, 3 letters in 8 years. Is that because there's a lot of people that write to the local paper and it's hard to get in, or you just don't write them very often?
Well, no, I'm more busy, like calling in this show, so that I have to.
That's a weird thing, don't you think? I mean, because I enjoy your calls.
Okay.
You do bring up interesting topics, Sarah. A lot of the time, sometimes, not so much.
Why?
But you can't win them all. But as far as local, you want to affect people locally, don't you? Why wouldn't you write to the newspaper a little bit more often? I mean, if you are writing to the local paper, presuming they still have readers.
Seems like a lot of people in New Mexico listen to the show.
Well, that may be true, and we are on in Albuquerque I think on the weekends, but
we get a lot of callers from New Mexico and Arizona area.
That's
true. Right. But so that's the whole thing, is that I know all of you guys have those smartphones. And that you guys could, except me, I got a dumb phone because I'm cheap, But with a family plan, I only pay $15 because I'm hooked up with Raymond got a family plan, so the second line is $15. So, but we're thinking of getting a smartphone or internet service.
Now,
so
Ray, you mentioned your Raymond. Is that what you said? Is that your roommate?
Yeah, Ray. Yeah. Yeah, roommate, right.
I thought his name was something else. Richard.
We figured out a way to... But Richard, we figured out a way to get...
is it Raymond or is it Richard?
Well, both.
Oh, it's like a middle name? One of them's like a middle name or something?
Yeah.
So, now, he's in his 70s. Is he somebody who reads a newspaper regularly?
Well, he only buys a newspaper when his article is published, and we cut it out already.
Thanks, Sarah, for the call tonight.
So
Appreciate it.
If I'm understanding correctly, old people just purchase newspapers when they have articles published.
If that's what it takes,
that's what it sounds
for
like.
them to make a business.
They need
it's
to
not
start
gonna
publishing
work.
more of those articles.
Yeah, it's not going to work for them as a business if that's what their demographic is saying. There's more coming up here. You can share your thoughts with us. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever's on your mind. This is Free Talk Live.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. You can join us here. Bring up whatever you want. number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking about the struggling newspaper business. They've been cutting back on print runs. Recently, a major publisher, Gannett, which is the largest chain in the country, eliminated their Saturday edition, gone to what they call the weekend edition, which is what they did here in Keene. Now, Gannett doesn't own the Keene Sentinel. Keene Sentinel is an independently owned newspaper, but I have, just out of curiosity, reached out to the auditing bureau to see what their current circulation rate is, because it was down to like 8,000 and change back in 2013, so I suspect it's even worse now.
8,000?
Yeah.
And they have a business out of that?
Amazing.
With only 8,000 readers?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? They can pay journalists and stuff like that somehow. Well, advertisements.
Oh, wow.
The advertisers still want to reach people.
That's just 8,000 people that subscribe. There might be more people buying it out of the box.
No, that includes that.
Yeah,
that includes those numbers.
Yeah, I mean,
per day.
I can think of a couple. I mean, maybe you can employ a couple of people, but they can't have many people left.
Well, some people just look at them at the Moose Mart. They're just like, oh, look at this with the Keene Sentinel
That's
staying
what I
on the
was
front
doing.
page. That's what I do every day.
Right?
Yeah, I do that every day.
So we're talking about the situation with newspapers around the country, and again, costs are dramatically up. $720 a metric ton to print instead of $520 a metric ton, so almost 50% increase in printing costs. Of course, inflation's hitting them too.
That's got to be a big one.
They say that this is the MSN.com story here. The abandonment of print has progressed slower than many anticipated. The media business analyst for the Poynter Institute, Rick Edmonds, said that the change at Gannett is incremental, but it's a step along the way to bigger reductions. The fewer people who subscribe to a daily paper, and we're seeing numbers dwindle, the more expensive it becomes to deliver as paper routes get more and more scattered, right? Because it used to be, it used to make sense if almost every house is receiving the paper. It makes more sense to pay somebody to go out and do it. But if it's only 1 out of 10 houses or something like that that's receiving a newspaper, or 2 or 3 or something like that, then it takes a lot more time. The number of houses you're delivering to per minute is much lower.
Yeah, and it's interesting too about that is, normally I would think why don't they just use the post office? But
to pay for them for delivery.
I mean, especially
at some point they will.
How low their numbers are.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking, well, that doesn't really work well either, because people expect their newspaper in the morning before they go to work. So, but then again, I guess if they're all retired, maybe it doesn't matter anymore. I don't know.
That is a good question. The post office wouldn't be able to get it done very quickly because they're so bureaucratic. The
mail comes to our house at 3 p.m.
Right.
Well, also, if you ever send a letter within Keene, you will see that it actually goes to Manchester.
The delivery time would also be a problem, because it would be delivered 2 days later.
Yeah. Well, it might be the next day, but...
Why does it go to Manchester?
Because of bureaucracy. I mean, the way their system is set up.
Yeah.
They have this sorting system that they do or whatever. Anyway, some chains in the newspaper business sold their printing presses and outsourced their work to plants located further away, which means stories have to be finished earlier in the evening, and the following day's newspaper might not even have the most up-to-date information. So even the newspapers are getting staler as far as news is concerned. I mean, it was always yesterday's news today.
Right.
But now it's late yesterday's news later, You
know what? That's actually not always true. They used to have morning, lunch editions and evening editions of
Once upon a time.
But this was before all of our time period.
That's true.
This would have been probably in the 30s.
That would have been in bigger cities probably as well.
40s, 50s, something like that.
Wow.
Some publishing executives say there's still money to be made from physical papers, though. John Garrett, whose company Community Impact prints more than 40 free monthly local newspapers and provides daily online reporting, said the key is to produce a product that's attractive to both readers and local advertisers, and he says his newsrooms are adding journalists. He says print...
Wait, what?
That's what he says. But then again, he's only doing a monthly paper.
Oh.
So that's a completely different business model.
I wonder, but you know what? If the quality of the reporting is up, that might make sense, and that might make it actually worth paying for.
A new magazine, it's on this paper type material, it's almost like newspaper feeling, a representative came into the Mighty Moose Mart and asked if they could just leave it there for free. And they do a monthly edition magazine thing, and it's all kind of like spirituality, and it's a Northeast
New
region.
England. Yeah,
New
you showed
England.
that to me, I think.
It's really cool. I like it.
Yeah, and it's good for them when they can find businesses that'll just let them put things in there. I remember going around trying to find locations for I don't know if it was Daryl's Paper or the Keene Free Press a long time ago, and like the Price Chopper is a local grocery store. They charge you. You don't just get to. They're not just all about the community or whatever. They're charging you some number of dollars every month if you want to have a spot at the front of their store, because they get a lot of traffic. Yeah. And I'm sure every paper wants to be there. The Indy Star showed Simone Biles the magnitude of gymnastics abuse. Here's how it got the story. Gannett, which merged with the Gatehouse chain in 2019, set a goal of increasing its 1.6 million digital-only subscribers to 6 million by 2025, but print subscriptions still bring in significant cash, accounting for more than $1.2 billion in revenue compared with about $101 million for digital-only subscriptions. The company expects revenue to dip, but to turn a profit in 2022. Gannett's newsroom saw some layoffs after the merger and during the pandemic, and by the end of 2021, the company employed 4,300 fewer people than just 1 year prior, though it's unclear how much of that 24% reduction affected their journalists and how much was because of layoffs versus buyouts, attrition, or other causes. So just within like a year or so, they knocked out 24% of their staff. The Akron Beacon-Journal endured layoffs long before it was purchased by Gatehouse in 2018, but there were no job cuts to their 40-person newsroom last month, where the Monday print paper was eliminated. The Journal editor fielded calls and emails from frustrated subscribers, though he said many have expressed a version of, quote, "We wish you weren't doing it, but we understand," unquote. He has written multiple columns explaining how to access reporting on Mondays, including describing how he helped a 77-year-old subscriber navigate to the e-edition on her iPad. So it's literally a process of hand-holding customers and showing them the new way of getting information. He says, the point I've tried to make is the world has changed, and we have to change with it. We have to focus on the sustainability of our journalism and making sure we're here to serve the community. But then they come up against this issue that they mentioned here, which is that revenues for Gannett on their digital side is like less than a tenth of the revenues for the physical print edition.
There's more competition nowadays.
There's, number one, there's way more competition. Yeah. But two, people on the internet, they're cheap. They don't want to pay for a subscription for something.
Nope.
I mean, you really have to have something outstanding to attract, because like you said, there's more competition. You can go and get the story about, we're going to talk about pennies. You can go and get the story about the penny probably from 50 different sources.
Or if there was a website where they wanted me to pay, I could just use 12foot.io
or archive.ph.
Yeah.
There's a couple of sites out there that do a great job of knocking out paywalls so people can get the information that they need or that they want.
I've always thought it was a bad idea to move to a paywalled version, because you lose the advertising. And even with traditional advertising, newspaper business, the money was in the advertising.
But that's the other thing. You can't get as much for advertising.
I know, but
version.
blocking your blocking customers, ends up destroying your advertising business.
Yeah,
right?
You're hurting yourself by doing that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. These old dinosaurs are trying to change with the times, and it's just, I don't think for a lot of them, it's not going to work out.
No, definitely not.
The number 603-283-6160. Speaking of dinosaurs, they're getting rid of the penny. We can talk about that coming up here in moments. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Russia's military has stepped up attacks near the Ukrainian capital Kyiv a day after its large warship, the Moskva, sunk in the Black Sea, which Ukraine said was a result of damage sustained in Ukrainian missile strikes. Russia's Ministry of Defense said it struck a factory near Kyiv that produces long and medium-range missiles, as well as anti-ship missiles. Both sides are now gearing up for a ground war in the east of the country over territories in Ukraine's Donbass region, which have been claimed by Russian separatists. In Washington, U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price said the U.S. and its NATO allies are ready to impose more sanctions on Russia while providing security assistance to Ukraine. He also echoed President Biden's pledge of swift and severe consequences if Russia deploys nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons.
You've heard from the president, you've heard from us that there would be consequences not only from the United States, but we would ensure that those consequences would be severe, would be swift, and would be enacted by our allies and partners around the world.
Twitter has launched a counterattack against Elon Musk's plan for a hostile takeover. The social media company is making a corporate maneuver commonly called a poison pill. FSN's Rachel Silverman has that report from San Francisco.
The so-called poison pill blocks hostile takeovers by giving certain shareholders the right to purchase more stock if an outsider, in this case Elon Musk, tries to take control. That would effectively dilute Musk's stake in Twitter. He recently revealed he had acquired a 9% stake in the social media company and then announced plans to buy Twitter for $43 billion. Musk says his vision for Twitter includes relaxing its moderation policies. Twitter says the poison pill plan will remain in effect for 1 year. Rachel Silverman, San Francisco.
South Korea is lifting all of its COVID-19 social distancing rules. People will still be required to wear face masks, but from next week, all other restrictions will be lifted for the first time since the pandemic began. Nora Weineck reports.
South Korean Prime Minister Kim Bok-kyum says the virus situation has stabilized and the medical system's capabilities are under control. From Monday, smaller businesses will be able to operate freely without a curfew, and a 10-person limit for private gatherings will be removed. The mask mandate, however, will be kept for now as the government monitors the situation. South Korea's daily COVID-19 cases fell below 150,000 this week, down from more than 600,000 cases a day a month ago. The country's Disease Control and Prevention Agency says the current declining trend could continue for some time. Nora Weineck, Tokyo.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones open. You can join us, 603-283-6160. We're talking about old things going away. And I was just wanting to talk about newspapers, but then somebody, Olivia, called in from Arizona and pointed out that the penny is going to be going away. And this is something that we've sort of talked about here on Free Talk Live over the years. It's like the pointlessness of the penny today, especially with inflation. And the fact that the penny costs more than it's worth to actually manufacture it. It was like 2 or 3 cents the last time I looked.
I remember this when I was a kid. And
remember the idea of ending the penny?
Yeah. Well, I mean, plans and talk about ending the penny. I mean, I'm not the youngest, and certainly definitely not the youngest in the room here. But it's been going on since at least like the 90s, early 90s.
Yeah.
So,
and now, and we'll get into it a little bit deeper here. I've got apparently a press release about this. If you want to weigh in, the number 603-283-6160. But let's go to the phones here. We got Law Dog on the line in Michigan. Law Dog, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, those journalistic rags known as newspapers, they're just they basically one party jock sniffing and ball washing the Biden administration, and they're part of the cover up. But
which explains
Miranda
why
Devine,
it is that the government is now hiring journalists, quote unquote.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Miranda Devine's hitting it out of the park. She's 60 years old. She's from Australia. She's got that laptop from Hell book, and my gosh, Hunter Biden goes on 6-week crack ninjas, and you know, they're dirty. The money's coming up, and what we got to do is we got to impeach the big guy. Otherwise, he's going to pardon Hunter Boy, and he'll get off scot-free, and he shouldn't. He's the worst.
Apparently, Kim.com is about to release a bunch of stuff from the Hunter Biden stuff. Did you see him tweeting about that?
I saw him mention something about that.
Kim.com? Like
I don't know how he has it. But
I thought
the pirate
Kim.com
guy,
was... I thought
in New Zealand?
Yeah, I thought Kim.com was saying that WikiLeaks was supposed to release it.
Yeah, but he is working with some Swiss forensics group that is going through it, and they sent it to WikiLeaks.
Him? Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Very, very interesting.
Law Dog, what else you got? Anything else to share?
Yeah, just something quick here. It's the introduction of it's a book review of preview in a Miranda Devines laptop from hell. It says in the spring of 2019, 4 years after Hunter Biden's brother's death, Hunter Biden's crack addiction was raging. His wife of 24 years divorced him, and the steady affair that he had with his brother's widow was on the rocks. A stripper from Arkansas has launched a paternity suit. His business partners are jailed or vanished or presumed dead. The fortune he has made from the foreign oligarchs and Delaware donors has been squandered or inaccessible. There you have it, folks, off the record on the QT and very hush-hush. I mean, this guy's a piece of crap.
But I guarantee you he's not going to see the inside of a jail cell.
You're probably right.
Yeah. Thanks for the call tonight, Law Dog. I appreciate it. The number here is 603-283-6160. I mean, he's the president's boy, so the odds that the Justice Department's going to prosecute him for anything is pretty
Well,
pretty
earlier
slim.
this week, somebody said to Joe Biden, well, you're the president. And he said, no, I'm Professor Biden from Penn State.
Wait, no.
They said this to
I
Joe
saw the
Biden?
video. I don't know if he thought he was making a joke.
Who knows?
Maybe I didn't see the whole context, but
Maybe.
it was like, what?
Who knows if he even knows where he is in any given
I mean, this
moment.
is a joke that's constantly being made.
Yeah.
If he actually is like, if he's actually making a joke about himself, like that's really funny.
I don't know.
So soon, finding a penny on the sidewalk will be as likely as getting struck by lightning twice. The U.S.
Whatever.
Mint announced early April it will stop producing pennies beginning in 2022 and will make its last batch April 1st of 2023.
Do you think people will hoard pennies?
Somebody will.
Because they'll be like, oh, these are going to be valuable
Worth something,
now.
yeah, right. And it's arguably the biggest coin news since 1857 when Congress discontinued the half cent.
Yeah.
Which, believe it or not, people weren't thrilled about at the time.
I have to see this. Wait, what year did they end the half cent?
1857.
It shows you how old I am. I remember a teacher talking about how when she was little, they had half-cent candies, I think it was.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember when I was little, like the cheapest like little gum that you could buy was 2 cents.
Really?
Yeah, and then I think it raised to like 5 cents. Yeah. I can only imagine it's probably like a quarter today. Yeah.
The coronavirus led to a nationwide coin shortage in 2020, which I always question that. Like, that seems so manufactured. That seems so sketchy, the whole coin shortage thing that happened, which revived the debate about the penny's usefulness. The purchasing power of the penny, of course, and the dollar has declined over the years because of inflation. And it should be pointed out here that inflation is an increase in the money supply. So the penny and the dollar have been getting worth less over time. And meanwhile, its production costs have gone up. In the 2019 fiscal year, the U.S. Mint produced more than 7 billion pennies at a loss of almost $70 million.
So if I understand this correctly, the government's actually listening to us for once by
the FBI certainly is
by not producing as many pennies.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
I just don't quite think they understand when we say stop printing so much money. They understand what we're actually getting at. Discontinuing the penny, I don't think is going to do the trick.
No.
If you continue to print the dollars.
It costs roughly 2 cents to manufacture a coin that's worth half that. I'm surprised it's still 2 cents. I wonder if that's an updated number.
I doubt it.
Under the recent crazy inflation.
If pennies start to really go away, like this article claimed, how will they have things that are like $1.83 3 or something.
They'll round up.
It'll be 185.
Everything will have to be 85.
Yep.
That's so weird.
Yeah, they'll set their computer systems to, even though tax will come out with penny amounts, right? Because 7% of whatever is going to be, there's going to be some sort of...
Yeah, they'll probably just like round up or down or cut it off or something. Yeah.
Wow.
And he says, let's see here. In high school, I started writing letters to my congressional reps about canceling the penny, said a head of strategy at Block Native. In 2008, it was obvious they were a drag on economic activity. And in 2021, especially compared to the efficiency of fractionalized tokens on blockchain networks, I'm shocked that we still have the penny. Well, it's not shocking. I mean, it's government. They don't exactly move quickly. They're not really responding to the marketplace or anything like that.
They don't care about the economy.
No, the only reason they're getting rid of the penny is because they finally decided to stop throwing money away. They're losing money on the production of it, and some bureaucrat finally said, all right, well, we can stop this now. You know, it didn't have anything to do with like what people want.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, I could maybe understand, like, 30 years ago, maybe I probably still couldn't understand, but now with inflation and all that, it's like
it's well past time.
I mean, can you buy anything with a dime, let alone a penny?
I put a dime in a parking meter today.
And how much time did it get you?
Not much.
Probably less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was thinking
6 minutes,
today, can you even put a penny in a parking meter?
No,
of course not.
They don't accept pennies.
No, the pennies are basically worthless at this point. Somebody, according to this here, not everyone wants to see the penny go the way of the dodo, though. Some people are clinging to the copper coin for its sentimental value.
That's
one
retarded.
Of the first coins produced by the U.S. Mint following its creation in 1792. Other pro-penny people say that getting rid of the penny could lead to a 1-cent sales tax being implemented on consumers because of the high number of prices ending in 99 cents. But maybe those prices will be on the way out, too.
Yeah, how are people going to cling to their precious $6.99 so they can trick people into buying things price?
I mean, it's going to happen is it's going to go to $1.95 instead of $1.99
or $2.
That's true.
Well, you're right. Walmart's been doing that for years with the 96. Walmart, do you ever notice that with Walmart?
Yeah, and that's weird.
Yeah, because every other business, it's $1.99 or $10.99 or whatever.
Because if something says like $4.99, I'll always say, oh, it's $4, and Ian will say it's $5, like at the same time.
The number is 603-283-6160. You can join us here, share your thoughts. It's Free Talk Live.
Never, ever send a follow-up email asking, did you get my email? Email 101. If it didn't bounce back undeliverable, it got where you sent it. And avoid transmedia pestering, like calling to ask, did you get my email? Or emailing to say, I left you a voicemail. If your emails and voicemails aren't being acknowledged, your problem isn't technology, it's technique. Is your message concise and understandable? Have you boiled it down to seem as relevant as possible to the recipient? In other words, is it the opposite of spam or junk mail? All of this really matters if you're a job seeker. But even if you're not, with money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
Crack cocaine, the way it hurts individuals and communities, I would really like to see dealers get the death penalty.
Why are you so violent?
It's a violent drug. It gets to your brain, it reorganizes, it actually physically changes the structure of your brain.
That's true with alcohol. The community is being put in danger by the fact that these drugs are illegal. I don't use crystal meth, but I'm in danger from those who do use crystal meth, in that if they need another hit and they can't afford it and their drug dealer's not willing to accept a BJ in order to give them a hit of crystal meth, then they are going to go and steal things, break into cars, break into homes. If you can't see how prohibition creates more problems than it solves, if you can't see how prohibition leads to more violence,
just look at Al Capone and the history of alcohol. It's simple.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power. But there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Moments remain. Maybe enough time for you if you call in now. 603-283-6160 is our number. That's 603-283-6160. And do want to say thanks to Joseph Scholl, who is a Free Talk Live Silver supporter of the AMPS program. You can go to amps.freetalklive.com there, and you can subscribe to our Patreon and do it for as little as $5 a month, like Joseph Scholl. Appreciate the support. It helps us get Free Talk Live on more radio stations, bring new internet listeners on board, expand the ideas of freedom to more ears. You can help us with that. And you get some cool perks. You get some benefits over at amps.freetalklive.com. And by the way, Freedom's Phoenix is your source for all news, economic news, government overreach, insane government spending, and more. Get today's headlines all in one place and from a fresh libertarian perspective. You can find this and more at freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. So, Chris, you had an update for us on a topic we covered some months ago. There was news about Mozilla Firefox, which is one of the most popular browsers on the planet. They decided they were going to stop taking cryptocurrency. Mozilla is a donation-based thing, right? Like, they don't sell advertisements, so they're supported by people that support them.
They actually are supported mostly by funding from the search results to Google.
Oh, really?
And or theoretically some other.
So they got a deal. They've got a deal with Google to funnel them business.
I mean, to the extent that they actually have users, which have been dwindling, unfortunately, because of other bad decisions.
Well, now crypto users are going to be taking a hike from Firefox because Firefox stopped accepting crypto, and they used the environmental damage from, which is all a bunch of BS.
Right. And if you start looking at their numbers, the crazy thing is they're saying something to the fact that the cost per transaction is $1,333 or something. Works out to something like that.
If that were true, no one would use Bitcoin.
Mozilla is saying that?
No.
The people claiming the environment.
Propaganda, that people are using to attack crypto. And I think what it actually indicates, sign-wise, is like it indicates that there is some power that be that really wants to take it out. I mean, and
the federal
it's
government,
not, right? Obviously, the federal government, but like it's
the bankers,
right? Like they seem to be more scared than ever because they're like just flat out lying about like this whole environment thing.
Because most people don't know how to look into it.
Right.
I wouldn't know how to start researching that
headline.
myself.
They see that headline and they think, oh, it must be true.
They start talking about like whole countries, you know, Bitcoin uses up, well, sure, but how much does the traditional, dirty fiat currency system,
no one cares about that.
And by comparison, it's actually way less environmentally damaging by their own numbers.
Absolutely.
Or accurate numbers anyway. By comparison, it costs something, it depends on what numbers you're looking at. But if you do like a Visa, and this is the crazy thing is they actually are even comparing, these people are even comparing it against like Visa and MasterCard transactions. And it's like, how can you, and they're not even comparing numbers wise because they don't even understand what they're talking about, but they're comparing it like, oh, well, it's easy to, swipe a card. Why would I trust Bitcoin when I could just trust my like bank or whatever? And
that's a person who's obviously never had a cut off from a bank account or had their card deactivated.
Right.
Cards charges declined.
Or had their stuff stolen.
Yeah.
Like you can't just get your wallet keys stolen because you used a gas pump.
Correct. There's no skimming. There's skimmers for crypto.
Part of the problem is that the costs of using every time you swipe that card, that Visa or MasterCard or American Express, you're paying for it through increased prices.
Correct.
And it's not even a small amount. If you bought, a $1,000 laptop, you might be paying $70 towards Visa and MasterCard to use that network.
Yep.
If you were to say use Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin, like there's cheaper cryptocurrencies out there, but Bitcoin, even if you pay $1 for it or a couple dollars even for it, or even if you pay $20 for it, you're still actually better off as a result than using a Visa or MasterCard or American Express or any of these
So
networks.
The latest news is not about Firefox. Firefox was just the first big internet organization to stop taking crypto. Now it's even bigger.
It is.
Wikipedia.
So this is a story from Ars Technica, and Wikipedia community votes to stop accepting cryptocurrency donations. So there's more than 200 longtime Wikipedia editors have requested that the Wikimedia Foundation, so they're behind Wikipedia, stop accepting cryptocurrency donations. The foundation received crypto donations worth about $130,000, that's US, in the most recent fiscal year. So now this isn't a lot of money relative to their
whole budget,
but it's still like not an insignificant amount of money.
Well, plus, what about previous years when Bitcoin wasn't worth as much? They received Bitcoin back then too, and what's that worth now if they held on to it?
If they actually take this into account relative to time, like over the years, right? I'm sure they.
If you got $100,000 in Bitcoin just a few years ago, it's probably worth more than $1 million.
Right now, I don't know if they were cashing out or if they were holding it or what. But this is also a big question, and
they sound really stupid, so they probably were cashing out.
It's a good possibility, and it's interesting because I do know nonprofits that did cash out, and part of it.
Sorry now.
Part of it was because they were concerned about the legal aspects of it and uncertainty, so they would just always cash out.
That's too bad.
But it was to the detriment of a lot of these nonprofits. Yeah, so less than 0.1%, not 1%, less than 0.1% of the foundation's revenue, which topped $150 million last year. Debate on the proposal has raged over the last 3 months. Cryptocurrencies are extremely risky investments that have only been gaining popularity among retail investors.
But it's not an investment if it's a donation.
It's not, and this is the crazy thing. It's not an investment. It's a currency. Like that's what it was designed to be.
Sure, but people do invest in it. I can understand.
Sure, just like they invest in the U.S. dollar or euros or other things, right?
Which are terrible investments.
Right. It's not right for most people. You don't want
Those
to.
will never go up.
Right. You wouldn't want to invest. But in the defense of people who are investing in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies usually, or at least Bitcoin, it has actually been like the best investment of in like human history.
But from the perspective of Wikipedia, that is a stupid objection to make because It's free money.
It is.
People are donating this to you.
And I can certainly tell you, I am not going to be donating, dollars to.
I'm never going to give them a dime.
I don't even donate. If somebody doesn't, if there's a nonprofit and they don't take cryptocurrency, I don't donate.
I have given to Wikipedia in the past.
Yeah.
And I won't do it again.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because they're not taking crypto.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, these are the people, people who have had crypto for years and years. These are the people with the money, guys. These are the people you want to be appealing to donate more money because they can.
Sure.
Whereas your average person who doesn't have, they've been. I mean, look at the dollar. I mean, with inflation, things have been going in the wrong direction. So people have less. Your people who are contributing have less and less money each year who only have dirty fiat. Whereas if you have crypto, you've been getting wealthier over the last couple of years or decade or so. Yeah. So. Cryptocurrencies are extremely risky investments that have only been gaining popularity among retail investors. I already said that. I do not think we should be endorsing their use in this way. Let's see. Guerrilla warfare is Molly White, Wikipedian, who has become something of an anti-cryptocurrency activist. She also runs the Twitter account Web3 is going just great. I suspect this is the woman who created a 3-hour, hour and a half long video on how bad cryptocurrency is. And
really?
She attacks libertarians in it, and I didn't get very far, but her numbers are just all wrong. Good.
First they ignore you, then they fight you, right? Or no, then they laugh at you, then they fight you. So we're in a fighting phase here.
And it still blows my mind that people are believing this how on earth, and they don't say it's $1,333. They simply they quote
per transaction.
Right, per transaction. But they say a certain amount per transaction, and then you have to convert it, and they do that because it's easier to manipulate people because nobody actually goes and does the math and checks them on it. But if they did, they'd quickly realize that this doesn't make any sense. And I don't even know where they come up with this $1,333 number because that's not the cost of mining a Bitcoin. So it's not the initial creation cost of that Bitcoin. So it's it's almost like they're just pulling these numbers out of thin air that have no connection to anything.
As far as I can figure out.
Yeah, it was $1,333 or so.
Masonic numbers 13 and 33.
Yeah. So let's see. Which highlights some of the many disasters happening in crypto? DeFi, NFTs, and other Web3 projects, the account profile says. Yeah. This is kind of interesting too, because it's you're also lumping different things all together, and they're not all the same. They have different uses, and some of them are garbage, right? I don't think any of us would say all cryptocurrencies are something you should use or all blockchain technologies.
Yeah. I despise this particular viewpoint, the viewpoint that payment methods should be protested. I mean, it is just so short-sighted and so dumb.
Especially the basis that they're protesting over.
Especially when you're going to continue taking the dollar that funds wars.
See you tomorrow. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191.